And so it's going to be where the old Veteran Services Suite on the third floor was. Also, Finance and Human Resources will be relocated to the old Land Management Suite, also on the third floor. Claims in approximately $11,408,874 were approved for the month of October. And there were 2 reappointments to county boards. The Van Buren Road Commission, Reginald Bowes, and his term expires 12/31/2028, and that was approved. The other reappointment was to the Connexus Workforce Development Board, George Salibi, and his term expires 12/31/2025. And then we have a local person, Stephanie Timmer. She has been appointed to the EDC board, and her term expires 2/13/2029. We are always very proud of our veterans, and there are over 600,000 in Michigan. For our county vets, we want to do something special for them for the holidays. So Wednesday, December 14th, from 1 to 3, there's a holiday food basket giveaway. And it's going to be sponsored by Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, plus other companies. I'm going to give this to your city manager, Kate. There you go. And I can also send the electronic copies to you, too. From 12 to 1, the community can volunteer to help set up if they'd like to. And then from 3 to 4, there's a time to help tear down and clean up. It's going to take place at 801 Hazen Street near the Van Buren County Mental Health Authority building. And there's going to be food baskets given away in the parking lot. DD 214s, which I don't know if any of you know about DD 214s, they are for veterans, and that proves that they were honorably discharged. Is that correct, Jeff Arnold?
Discharge papers, yep.
Yes, yes. And so they're going to be helping the veterans who don't have theirs get those in Conference Room B. So it's not according to income. It's just if you are a veteran with your identification. And there's a phone number to contact the Department of Veterans Services for the county with David or Dennis, and I will give you that information. There's a map, too, for anyone who's interested in going there. Let's see. I think I gave you the wrong copy because it didn't come out too clearly. Okay. Well, there you go. Shuffling papers here. All right. There is a list, I believe it's every month, that's given out by the Michigan Works of all the jobs in the area. I don't know if you've seen that list. It's many, many pages now, and I'm going to give the contact information to your city manager. If she would like to put it on the website, then anyone who's looking for a job can go on there. It's in Spanish and in English. So there you go. And then the last item, it has to do with a Suicide Prevention Coalition. And there is a folder for each of you. I am very passionate about making sure that we can save as many lives as possible. So education is key. On this flyer, it has emergency numbers. It also talks about what the coalition does. And so I'm not going to take any more time up right now, but I just want to let you know I'm going to be giving that out to you. And your city manager is great in putting a lot of the information on her blog and the website, so the public can look on there. Are there any questions?
I have
Go ahead.
a question. The
the EDC that you were talking about earlier, I don't know what that stands for.
Economic Development Corporation.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
And then I just had two questions about previous things. The ARPA funds, have they been all allocated for Van Buren County, or will there be a second round of funding?
Yes, we haven't allocated all of them. If you go on our website, and I think, I don't know if I passed out the amount that's remaining, I think it's around $4 million that haven't been given out, plus the amount that we set aside for the broadband, which was $7 million, and that still has to be given out. But we are no longer, at this time, accepting more applications. We're going to try to disperse what we have to those who have applied already.
Gotcha. And then the Friendly Caller program, I looked that up last time, and it sounded really amazing. But is it only for like this COVID period, or is it an ongoing program now?
I believe it's ongoing, but I can check and get back with you on
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Anybody else? Thank you, Gail. Appreciate it. Have a great night. Thanks for coming, as always. That takes us to the consent agenda, items A through H.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda, items A through H.
Can
Second. We have a motion. We have a second.
I ask for one of them? I just have a question about one of them, which is the schedule for next year.
Which item?
Item D.
Item D.
D. You want to just, just to set meeting dates?
Yeah,
You want to pull it, or you just want to, I mean, it doesn't matter, but pull it out and discuss it, or?
yeah. Can we do that?
Sure.
It's just a little question.
You have
So-
to re-amend, you have to vote this motion down, and because it's seconded already.
Well, maybe we don't have to do that. If I can just ask the question and see if it needs to be.
Fire it.
Okay. I was just wondering, I think January 16th, I don't have it in front of me, is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is a federal holiday. So I think that's the day it is. But I was just wondering why we don't observe that and not have a meeting on Tuesday.
It's not one of the holidays that we have for city staff, so we are working that day, and I guess that's never been asked of this board to move that over.
Okay.
Because City Hall is open, so I guess we've never looked at that.
Okay. Is it possible to observe that?
It's possible.
I know in the past, we've met on that day, and it's given people the opportunity in their discussions here at City Council to talk about Dr. King, which I thought was kind of a benefit of having a meeting on that day, but I can see your point, too.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought we could think about it at least.
I'm flexible. I'm not a federal government worker, so I work that day, so I would recognize it whenever.
I would say we can accept it as it is, and if that's something we want to talk about, we can always amend that later.
Okay,
That's fair.
okay.
That
That
would
sounds
be my
good.
suggestion at this point.
That's fair. We can always change it later date. That works. All right, then, we've got a motion, we've got a second. Let's roll call.
Arnold,
Yes.
Onuki,
Yes.
Reeser,
Yes.
Schlock,
Yes.
Sleeper,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. That takes us to old business. City Council will be asked to consider adopting Resolution 2022-31, which is a resolution establishing a South Haven social district.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-31 that establishes a South Haven social district.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion. We've got a second. Griffin, are you the sharer of
Definitely.
information?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. We have a topic before you this evening regarding the South Haven Social District. As many of you will recall, a few weeks ago, a proposed management and maintenance plan and map for a proposed social district in South Haven was brought before all of you for some initial input and feedback. At that time, City Council directed staff to bring a resolution formally designating the social district back before them at a future meeting. I do have a few updates for you since then. First off, we were able to incorporate a lot of the input provided at the DDA, Planning Commission, and then City Council meeting, expressing some questions and concerns. The couple that immediately come to mind is I know there were a couple condominium complexes who had some concerns about the boundaries, so we were able to get a lot of those addressed. I was also able to make contact with the Michigan Liquor Control Commission, and they were able to give kind of an initial preliminary glance through the plan. They didn't express any questions or concerns, for the exception of in the previous plan, there was some outdated language in the section regarding festivals and special events. So that section of the maintenance management plan is slightly tweaked from the previous version. But other than that, the map and maintenance management plan are substantially similar to what was brought before you at the previous meeting. And then this meeting, we have a resolution for you all to consider, should you all like to move forward with formally designating a South Haven social district. As a friendly reminder, should you all move forward with this, we would then submit these materials to the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. They would review those. Once the district was formally created, we could then start accepting applications from local businesses. Those applications would have to get brought back before you all at a later date, all working towards what could be a fall 2023 implementation. Happy to do the best I can to answer any questions.
All right, sounds good. Would you like to hear public questions, comments first?
Sure.
All right. How about public questions, comments on this before we go too much further on the social district? Just come on up, state your name and address. You'll have up to 5 minutes, and good evening.
Hi, Mike Campbell, 216 Erie Street. First comment is I would simply suggest that you make an amendment in the third whereas, second line. I think you probably mean food services, not feed services in your resolution, and maybe I'm wrong. Just some general comments. I know this is an economic development initiative, and I'm all for economic development. I also know that several members of this council are all about the data. Maybe I've missed it, but I haven't seen any of the data around how this is going to improve economic development. I've heard lots of comments that, oh, Kalamazoo has it, Holland has it, St. Joe has it, and oh, it's just wonderful, and it's doing a lot of good for the community. But I've not seen any data, and I was wondering why the ones, if there's anyone who is similarly concerned, to be able to see the data before making a decision about something of this nature. Sometimes it's we respond at more of a FOMO basis. You know, everyone else has it, so we need to have it as well. So that's comment 2. It would be interesting to know if Chief Thompson could explain the actual enforcement plan. I know that the management plan indicates that it will be just part of the regular police services that are provided. You know, I think, you know, depending on how well this is taken up, there could be a lot more patrol services needed downtown. And it would be interesting to know what the actual plan is as opposed to just being part of the regular services. And then third, or fourth, what I'd like to suggest is, you know, we always, whether we can look at this as potentially a revenue producer. I know that the city is going to produce a sticker that is going to be provided to each of the participating licensees of this program in order to be able to give cups to the patrons who are going to take these out on the street. I see this as an opportunity. Why not charge $1 or $2 for the sticker that you make the establishments pay, and then you pass it on to the patrons. Make it a privilege to be able to take that cup out onto the street and into other stores, and then you can have a revenue stream as well to pay for the signs and everything else that you're going to need to enforce and monitor and manage this program. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Griffin, you want to comment on the fees, just as far as, you know, paying for signs and whatnot. Sorry, one second, Pat, I was just asking Griffin a quick question. If you want to comment on that now, but we might have some ability to recoup. It's not a profit maker,
I
but
can. We're not planning on charging fees to participating businesses. This was discussed at the DDA briefly, that the DDA may be an option to help cover some of the limited costs associated with this. But it seemed counterproductive to charge the participating businesses when, as was mentioned, this is intended to support those establishments. So we're going to look to get their buy-in in other ways, but not as a fee to participate.
all right, so we'll look to the DDA otherwise. Okay, sorry, Pat, go ahead, sorry.
Okay.
Name and
Pat-
address and,
Pat Gaston, 97 Superior Street, also known as, I guess, Debbie Downer here. I really am not in favor of this at all. When it was first brought up, I think we were talking about fall, maybe fall, the off-season, but then it was, I think it was say, but if it's really successful, then we'll go into the other seasons. I think in the summer, this would be just a disaster. And so I guess, in a way, I'm like, I can kind of understand the fall situation. I really totally disagree with the summer situation. With the lake there, and we are not Holland. I'm sorry. We are not Kalamazoo. We're not Allegan. We're South Haven, Michigan. We are right on a lake here. We have hundreds, thousands of people come in to our city on a daily basis in the summer. It's just kind of a sad thing, isn't it? That we can't just go in and have a drink somewhere. We have to take it around with us. It's kind of a sad commentary on our community, or on how people have to walk in around with their beers and their drinks. No, I just think it's kind of sad. And then I'm just against this if it goes beyond fall.
got it. This is only off-season, just so everybody knows. This is just fall.
Right, but I mean, I think somebody said, well, then we'll see how it goes. And then we'll go into the other season. So, I mean, that's what I heard.
Thanks for your comments.
Danielle Veenstra, 1220 Monroe Boulevard, and I am not in favor of a social district here in South Haven. Couple of reasons. I've heard a lot of people say it'll draw people here. What would be so unique about our social district that people would come here rather than going to Kalamazoo or St. Joe or Holland or Rockford? I can't believe that they would come here simply because we have a social district. I would rather that our town be thought of as the place that has the Minton Museum, the Bailey Hyde Museum, the Maritime Museum, family activities that would draw people in on season and off. Not, oh, come here and drink because we're the party town, just like every other party town in Michigan. So I am not in favor of a social district any time of year in any manner.
Thanks for your comments.
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I'm just going to supplement what I wrote, and thank you for acknowledgement. I am completely supportive of economic development. I agree that I've seen no numbers to show that this will provide the economic development it alleges to support. I think the economic development it would have helped was when COVID was at its peak and everything was shut down and nobody could go into restaurants. I think the ship has sailed. I think the wait and see policy was a fish out of water. And I think that it's just not right for downtown for the reasons already discussed. I think other more creative opportunities could be provided, and I'm concerned about the unintended expense and the unintended consequences. I do not believe that this has been presented at a meeting where Chief Thompson was already here, so she would have to make another trip, and I don't know if she was invited to opine. I do know from having attended the DDA meetings and the Planning Commission meetings, the references to their support in the staff report is wrong, at least with regard to the Planning Commission. There was no recommendation. It was never fully vetted by the Planning Commission. I recall there was an online survey. Whatever came of that? We were talking about data. What came of that? Is it that you forgot about it, like you forgot about the EIS? Did you not like the results? Were you hoping we would forget about it? You should know that we don't forget about things, especially when we take them ourselves. We're talking about trying to entice people to come here to drink in the off-season. The off-season is winter, snowstorms, blizzards, so you really want to increase alcohol content and driving in inclement weather. Is that really safe? And it was provided because it's supposed to be a social gathering. First of all, it's in winter. Who's going to gather outside right now? And we don't have any place for them to gather. You cannot go to Dykeman Park. You cannot go to the parks. Alcohol is prohibited, and I certainly hope this is not going to be used to erode that protection of our family areas. Residents have already spoken out about noise and concerns from people during the summer. We had someone fall off the deck along the condos into the river and die. Alcohol was involved. Do we really need to increase alcohol consumption? And also the map. The map shows all of the establishments that could participate. However, in the winter, how many are actually open? How many establishments are actually going to potentially be benefited from this, and how are people navigating from one to the other? I still cannot stress enough that there's no gathering spaces, and enforcement is a problem. Granted, our survey showed that people thought police capacity, I still have over a minute, Mayor, police capacity was good during the off-season, not during the summer season. So as it's already been warned, and I cannot stress it enough, you get it in on the off-peak season, and then you slip it through at a city council meeting, at off-season when many people are gone, and lo and behold, we have it in the summer. I think the resolution not only has to be corrected to make food out of feed, but also to ensure that much more needs to be done before it gets changed to extend full year round. I put a list of questions in my email. I do not have time to go through them, but I've touched on several of them. I think the key is getting input from the chief and not relying on what someone says she said. And I'm not opposed to economic development, and I'm not opposed to social districts per se, but I think the ship has sailed, and it's not right at this time. And it's about time the city council start listening to its vision statement and engaging residents, and let's see the results of the survey.
Thank you. Anybody else?
David Veenstra, 1220 Monroe Boulevard. I also oppose the social district. I'm confused by having it this time of year anyway, as has been previously mentioned. I just can't imagine that that's going to be an advantage to a lot of people to be able to walk around this time of year on the street with a drink. I think it adds to the confusion of some of our already existing confusing limitations. It adds another layer of what you may and may not do and where you may and may not do it. So I think that's a problem. I also think that we are now adding one more thing to enforcement, which it seems to me is already challenging enough. We already have enough challenges with enforcing what we need to enforce now without adding another layer to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Looks like going once, going twice. Okay. All right. Heard from the public. Do you want to just comment on, I know we've had Chamber of Commerce, Visitors Bureau, and lots of businesses, who have, obviously been supportive of this, and if you want to make comments on that, and then also just, I know I spoke with the chief, I always spoke with the chief, just if you want to summarize her comments or whatnot, just to make sure she's reviewed the plan. been
She
vetted.
has reviewed the plan. We've walked this through, we've shown her the map, we've also talked about, I know people are saying that there's no gathering space. It's really one more thing, if people want to window shop, I know the holidays are coming up, there's a lot of businesses that really are looking forward to that revenue when, as you can see, we don't have a lot of summer visitors, there's not too many cars parked out there. There's a lot of things that this would bring to the downtown as people are looking to maybe add one more amenity. So the chief was not concerned with the proposal with it being October to May. Again, this is not looking at the summertime. We understand the influx of visitors we get, and so when we designed this plan, based on what we were hearing from folks, is that this would be in the off-season. The off-season to us is the shoulder seasons and winter. So with that being said, I guess, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Not at this time.
No, I visited several cities, and I jump in here others. I couldn't agree more. I have no interest in the summertime for this. We have plenty going on in the summertime. Part of this was to look at kind of boosting activity in the off-season here. So,
We've seen some, we've talked with St. Joseph and Saugatuck. Both of them said it was well-received by their residents, it was well-received by merchants downtown. St. Joe, like theirs enough that they added a second one. They did not see any influx of crime. They did not see any more ills in their downtown. It just seemed to add more vibrancy to their downtown.
others? Thoughts, comments?
I just think that it could possibly be it could help the restaurants turn over their tables possibly a little quicker. Instead of having the after-dinner drink, maybe people get up and walk around, and it opens that table up quicker. I don't know. I'm for it, and I'm for it probably year-round, but that probably isn't what's on the ticket today.
Not today. Anybody else? Anyone been into cities where you've kind of seen these? I've been kind of curious because I'm not a walk around. I'm older. I have my drink at the restaurant. I don't walk with my drink. But I know there's that younger generation that's a little more trendy maybe to have a drink, walk, and mingle and look. And, and to see the cities we've been, I've seen, clear signs that say, this is the start of the end of the social district. They marked on the sidewalk. They did this. And of the cities we talked to, no one's really said anything other than it's kind of a non-event. I think there are a lot of, what if this all day long. And this is off-season. This is really looked to, kind of assist some of the businesses in the off-season only. So I view it, I guess, as something to try.
I have worked in Fenville where they have it, but I haven't really noticed a lot of people mingling outdoors outside of the restaurants. I've been to other communities where they have it, but the one I don't really drink a lot right now. So I haven't partaken in it, but I know I brought my kids to a parade in Holland, and when it was ending and we were going to go out to dinner, we kind of got stuck in with this crowd of people who were drinking a lot of wine, and that was just kind of hard to maneuver my kids around them and through them, and that was just one little incident. Not the end of the world, but I guess I would think we could find a way to have that vibrancy without needing alcohol for it. I just feel like we could think of something else to do. So I guess I just don't really understand why we need it, and I'm not really in favor of it.
Anybody else?
I'm supportive of this. The question I have is the typo that was already mentioned, is that something we can fix pretty easily without?
Yeah, I'll ask the city attorney, but I'd see that as non-substantive. I think we can just correct that.
Scrivener's
Yep.
error.
Okay.
And sorry, I forgot to say, I would be interested to know too if the places who have had it in place for a while have seen any impact on their revenue from the restaurants and whatnot. Do you guys know?
I
of
don't have
anything?
any specific data.
Okay.
Joe, were you going to say something? Sorry.
This is one of those rare issues that I have very little opinion on. I have mixed feelings. I don't see any economic development, appreciable advantage, maybe a little, maybe. I don't think it's going to attract tourists. Someone said people aren't going to come down here so they can drink outside. Steve said something I hadn't thought about. Yeah, maybe people will eat a meal, and then because they can drink outside, they'll go shop a little more. Maybe. And I think there could be a downside, and I am that person that did talk to a police officer in Kalamazoo, and he said there was no problem. Net, it just feels like it's another thing for the city to have to manage. It's another little thing for the police to have to manage, and I don't see that there's really any advantage, so I respectfully don't support it, but again, with mixed feelings.
For my part, I spent a day in Saugatuck last summer. It was a very busy day. Was there for several hours before I even noticed that there were people walking around with drinks. And I went, wait a minute, they do have a social district. So it appeared seamless, that there wasn't any issues with it. Talking to friends that live in Kalamazoo or in Holland, and they asked, well, hey, we're talking about doing this. How does it work for you? What do you do with it? And they talked about in Holland or Kalamazoo, they have problems finding a place to park. They can't always find a parking spot that's close to where they want to have dinner. So they park where they can, and then they might grab a beverage, beer, whatever it is, and then they have it while they walk to where they're having dinner, and then they walk home, or they walk back to their car and they leave. So I said, that's it? And they said, well, that's all we've ever used for it. So I kind of, like Joe said, I'm kind of mixed about it. I tend to be in favor. The one we're going to revisit this, right? If it passes, we'll revisit it in a year. If we don't like it, we can stop it, right? Kate's nodding.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
So we wouldn't be looking to put this in place till it'd be fall
Next fall.
2023. So, I mean, there's definitely going to be the opportunity to put it through for that season and then have city council weigh in on any changes they may or may not want to see. I think the other comment I'll make on this that hopefully is appropriate is, I think there's been a lot of, there's a lot of different comments on this, both kind of for and against. And I think one of the things we've heard, and seems to be expressed from a lot of your comments too, is there are a lot of communities that they have not seen as big of an impact, either based on the concerns or based on the participation as you may see. So, I guess my just suggestion for all of you when considering this is this probably fits a lot more into the want category than the need category. And it's one of these that, as the elected officials in town, we're really just looking for all of your guidance on, is this something you guys want to try in town?
And with that, the people that I've asked, overwhelmingly people are in favor of it that I've spoken to.
If we were to pass this, is there some type of a sunset, let's say 30 days in and we realize we made a big mistake, can we cancel it and overturn that?
So there is a formal policy that has to be followed per state statute to disband the social district. So it says the governing body may revoke the designation if it determines that the commons area, if there's issues. Before revoking the designation, the governing body must hold at least one public hearing on the proposed revocation. The governing body shall give notice under the General Open Meetings Act. So you'd have to hold a public meeting and cancel it, yeah.
Thank you.
Within a month, yeah.
That's a good question.
Probably take a month to cancel it, I would imagine, with public notice and public
Yeah,
hearings.
yes, but I think that's just recognizing you're not just going to pick it up and do it, but there is a process to end it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think we've had some discussion. I think here where people are going. So we've got the motion, right? We've got the second. Yes. Why don't we roll call it?
Okay.
Onuki,
No.
Reeser,
No.
Schlock,
Yes.
Sleeper,
Yes.
Arnold?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. That takes us to new business. City Council will be asked to introduce an ordinance. Again, this is an introduction. Introduce an ordinance to amend Section 82-93 of the Code of Ordinances to expand the golf cart season and to prohibit the use of golf cart to tow trailers, passenger carts or other items, and to set a public hearing on this topic to take place at the December 19th regular City Council meeting.
I'll make a motion to amend Section 82-93 of the Code of Ordinances to extend the golf cart season and to prohibit the use of golf cart to tow trailers, passenger carts, or other items, and to set the public hearing on this topic to take place December 19th at the regular City Council meeting.
Second.
All right, we've got the motion, we've got the second. Okay, what are the dates?
So the new dates that are being proposed in the ordinance amendment would be from March 15th to November 15th. We coincided that with the overnight parking restrictions. So that extends it out approximately another month in each direction, but it was not over year-round. We did talk with Chief Thompson about that. She was worried about low-speed accidents, which can occur. Low-speed accidents with just cars does cause some injuries, and with a golf cart, they could be more severe. So we caught on the happy medium of maybe March 15th and November 15th, which coincides with the overnight parking restrictions. So when you can't park overnight on the streets, you can't use golf carts. So that's what's being proposed here. And of course, we did add that language of no trailers and towing and things like that.
Okay. How about public questions or comments on this one?
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. I'm in favor of all the conditions you set for trailers and whatever, and coolers and all that kind of stuff, but I'm really not in favor of changing the dates. I mean, our chief mentioned that. We had snow before November 15th this year, if I'm not correct. And we can get a snowstorm in May, and I cannot imagine golf carts riding around in that kind of, they'd be ridiculous. I mean, they'd just be a hazard. So I'm in favor of the amendments you want to make, but not the dates. Keep the dates as they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mary Hasley, 76 North Shore Drive. First of all, I'm frustrated with the city in general because now we have items from City Council being scheduled for a vote on December 19th, and it directly conflicts with the ZBA meeting that got rescheduled. And as soon as it got rescheduled, I started asking that it get moved because of the direct conflict with City Council. I think what city staff has done is just disgraceful to have conflicting meetings on two boards that make significant decisions that affect our community. Despite that, I also take issue with items presented here. As I stated in the email to you, the staff report is inaccurate and I think misleading. I heard city manager's rendition of what Chief Thompson said. I was at the city meeting, and so were you guys when she was asked about the carts. And at that time, I believe it was being considered pushed back maybe a couple weeks, not a full month. But I don't believe she commented on moving the window. I think she commented on vehicles, especially the golf carts, being driven during inclement weather. And as we know from this year and several years past, we can get bad weather during that extended month on either end that is being proposed. I think it's foolish to extend it, and what is it going to take? Another death and another lawsuit to show how bad the decision is? Are you not capable of recognizing how bad the roads are and how the golf carts, it's not dependent, the legislation, the ordinance is not dependent on road conditions. It's dependent on time. It's short-sighted. It's not good for the community. I think it opens the city up to more liability. I think this is a bad recommendation with regard to the time frame. I support the hook, the latch and everything, but I would not extend the window any more than it already is.
Thanks for your comments.
David Veenstra, 1220 Monroe Boulevard. I also agree that moving the dates would be a bad idea for the reasons already mentioned, and I do share those concerns about holding two significant city meetings at the same time.
Thank you.
Mike Campbell, 216 Erie. I too want to commend the city for proposing to not allow the towing on golf carts. I do, however, agree with other speakers that you probably shouldn't extend the timeline when they can be used. I think 6 months on, 6 months off is a nice balance for those that have golf carts versus those who do not. I think at the most, what the city should have done would have been to respond to the petitioners who came asking for 15 days, either side of the initial calendar timeline. So at most, the city should have proposed April 1st through October 30th instead of going even further. And I know that there was at least one proposal in the last discussion from council that, oh, we should just make these year-round. But I think the reminder here is we have laws for a good reason, and that's because there are people who can't help themselves, and that's why laws are in place to take care of the idiots who are out on the streets when they're not supposed to, even though the law says they shouldn't be. So if you extend it beyond into the November period, you have that potential for having those people out on the streets causing accidents, even though we all would think that people would have sense not to. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Anybody else? It's going twice. All right. Council comments.
It's just an introduction.
That's the point. Any comments before we send it through?
Yeah, I did prefer the April 1st to October 30th that was proposed at the last meeting, and which was originally asked for by the petitioners. I just feel like the March 15th to the end of March, and even, after November, the weather is dicier and more dangerous and could lead to some incidents that we'd rather not happen.
Others? All's quiet, nothing. Okay. All right, we got no other comments. I've got a motion, I've got a second to introduce. Again, the ordinance to amend section 82-93 regarding golf cart season and to prohibit the use of golf cart tow trailers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Two.
I'm sorry, two?
Two no. Two
Okay.
no. Yeah. Okay. Next, City Council, we asked to consider the approval of a proposed superseding and restated consolidated lease agreement between the city and the Michigan Maritime Museum.
Make a motion to approve the proposed superseding and restated consolidated lease agreement between the city and the Michigan Maritime Museum.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion, a second. Kate, you going to walk us through this nice short lease?
So I'll have Attorney Curcio walk us through. This came about as some new buildings have been going up on the Michigan Maritime Museum's site. We came across just some things that we needed to clean up from the previous consolidated lease as the building has been done. So with that, Nick, you want to walk us through the agreement?
Sure. So as City Manager Hosier said, the reason for this document is some issues that arose during the process of the Maritime Museum's recent construction project. And I'll just walk through the staff report it kind of enumerates what the proposed changes are to the 2018 lease that currently governs the relationship between the city and the Maritime Museum. So the first is that the Maritime Museum has just submitted application, or at least preliminary application materials to extend the Orley dock on their premises out to the city's harbor line. That process, so this provision in the lease would just allow them to do that, subject to approval by the Harbor Commission and the Planning Commission. The Harbor Commission and the Planning Commission would still go through their ordinary reviews for ordinance compliance, for navigability concerns and things like that. This would just provide that if they were to get those approvals that would always be required for dock expansion, then the lease itself would kind of extend to cover the new area. The second item, the lease makes some minor adjustments to the boundaries as shown on the 2018 lease to reflect the just conditions on the ground. The current lease shows things that aren't quite accurate in terms of how the parties actually use the property. So there'd be minor adjustments at the very, I believe it's the eastern side. Let's see. Expanded to include the new boardwalk immediately to the north of the city's marina, and would be retracted to exclude the recent city-initiated improvements to the very south side of the property near the Evelyn S. Fish Tug. Again, those are just minor boundary adjustments to reflect how things are currently. Then item number 3 is reimbursement for project costs. The city advanced some costs while the project was ongoing to relocate utilities and things of that nature to keep the project moving along. The Maritime Museum has agreed to reimburse $70,000 approximately of those expenses. Notably, they would not be reimbursing $10,000 to relocate a gas line that previously ran under the premises. But other than that, all project-related expenses would be reimbursed through this agreement. Item number 4 is an extension of the lease term. This was contemplated by the 2018 lease. There's a provision that it was a 50-year lease, but once they build their new building, then it would be automatically extended for the expected useful life of the new building. So this just executes that provision and extends it out for essentially 100 years so that they can have the right to occupy the premises for that expected useful life of the building they just constructed. Item number 5, the Maritime Museum has for the last several years had the right and has exercised the right to lease Slip 28 in the city marina. They no longer wish to do that, so that just returns Slip 28 to kind of the ordinary pool of city slips, and the city will be able to lease that to private individuals or for the coming season, subject to the ordinary fee structure. Walkways, there's a provision in the lease that it refers to a walkway that was never built, so that's been removed from this draft. And then the final issue is parking. The original lease has some strange and I think arguably typos in it relating to parking. So just to clarify the parking situation and what we think the 2018 council intended, this I think more accurately and more clearly states that the MMM has the exclusive right to use the parking lot within the premises and may, if it wants to, limit it to its patrons, employees, and event invitees if it wishes to do so. Explicitly provides that the museum is solely responsible for the cost of maintaining those lots, the lot within the premises, just like the rest of the premises. During the life of the lease, they're responsible for maintenance. Any improvements to that parking lot would have to go through council, so that would include things like EV charging machines, parking gates, machines that take credit cards, anything like that where they're actually building on the premises would have to go to council in order for them to do that. And then finally, it reaffirms the arrangement that's currently in existence where we've got 15 off-premises parking spaces on the street designated for the use of museum patrons and employees. So that's a summary of all the conditions. You'll see there's a new proposed Exhibit A to the agreement that shows the premises as it currently exists. And I'm happy to answer any questions council has.
Questions from anybody?
So they have had those 15 spaces since 2018?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're currently marked with signage.
Yeah, I saw that. Is there anything like right at that intersection that says that there's more public spaces past those? I'm just wondering because when you drive by and you see those, it feels like you can't go, to me at least, anywhere back there.
I don't think so, because most of the parking that's on that street would be either dedicated to the municipal marinas outside of whatever's on Gull Lake property.
Okay, so there is no public parking past those?
Not on that strip.
Okay, then never mind.
Good question, though. Anybody else? Pretty straight. How about, are there any public questions on this one? Oh, got it.
I didn't
Come on.
for this reason.
Come on up,
My
just
name is
state your-
Jack Fitzer, 24 and a half Grand Boulevard. But it leads to, I have an interesting relationship here because I belong to museum, love museum, and think that it's fabulous and a lot of things that have gone place. But I'm also a boater who has a slip in the Maritime Museum there. I'm in slip 15. And a number of things have occurred in the past year. It's kind of a slippery slope of what's going on. If I have a guest to go visit my boat, to go sailing, the closest parking spot now is across Dykeman down the road there in front of somebody's house. The museum, where the lot in front used to be public parking and those 15 slots used to be public parking, are now strictly private for the museum's benefit. Now, I'm there a lot, and they're mostly empty. I'm just saying. Other things in this list of things that aren't important or just minor changes here and there, there was a walkway that they talked about that wasn't built. I'm not 100% sure what that was, but I'd like to point out that that slip when it was built, or the new museum one and the dock walkway that was built, which is very nice, walked it myself, had a nice afternoon there with a ride on the little boat down the river. But in the process of doing all this, the Maritime Museum slips had 3 entrances and exits at one time. And now there's one, and that particular one is at the far end on the south and west corner. If someone is located on a slip around the other way, it's gone from what would be 75 yards, still a long distance, 100 yards, to 150 or 200 yards walk, carrying whatever they're carrying back and forth to their boat. But more importantly than that, if there were to be any kind of an issue concerning safety, a fire on a boat, etc., instead of 3 ways of getting there, there's now only one, and there's only one way. So I'm kind of curious if that walkway that wasn't built was a walkway that had something to do with those 2 exits that are no longer in existence. I can't think. There were 2 or 3 things on the lease here that struck more, but I just can't, I don't remember. I'm not having it in front of me, but those were the 2 that stuck out the most. I think there are other questions that I'm surprised you don't have, but to me, it's a very clear personal thing. I see it every day. I see the guy that's on the far end of the dock and the lady that are lugging their stuff all the way around coming in front of my boat. I just happen to be lucky to be right there at where the washrooms and sidewalk is. So they aren't just little things to some people. And the parking is a really big thing to some people because it's all disappeared. Any amenity that we had, the things that benefited us over there, don't exist anymore. That's all.
Thank you. I'll come back to you on that one. I was gonna.
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. It doesn't affect what's going on right now, but eventually they're going to put in those new docks and whatever it is. And I looked at the original plan when they first planned the museum, and the first thing that caught my eye is, holy cow, those docks stick out quite a ways into the river. It might still be inside whatever the lot or the survey is for the harbor, whatever it is, and it'll probably be brought up harbor meeting. But when I come in from salmon fishing and at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you know how many boats are going to be out there, and most of them are sitting there, and that's a narrow area. They're sitting there to wait for the bridge to open. Now, my Grady White can go under that bridge unless the water gets way too high. So I have to weave in and out between those boats and get under the bridge. But that is a very congested area, and when they discuss that with the Harbor Commission, I think they ought to take into account that the extension of those docks looks like they get right to the edge of where the harbor is defined, and they should really not go that far. You can look at the drawing and say, wow, that's the narrowest part of the river, and it really is. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. All right. Other comments from this group?
I have a couple.
All right, let's go.
Probably questions for the attorney, I guess, or possibly staff. As far as, I guess, there must have been some type of a negotiation that took place. But as far as the city to pay for half of the survey costs and us not getting reimbursed for the $10,000 for the gas line, we basically gave the Maritime Museum an interest-free loan to get our electric taken care of so that the boaters would have electric this summer. So I don't know why we're not getting paid for the $10,000 for the gas line and why we would pay for half of the survey costs. It bothers me that it seems like if we pass this or agree to this lease that we're sending a message to Planning Commission and Harbor Commission that we're agreeing to the extension of the Orley dock, in which we are not, spoken so eloquently by our attorney. And I agree. I don't think. I'm not sure what the code is. I think it's 1.5 or 1, but possibly staff can help me with the parking space requires. Parking spaces required for the now 28 slip marina that we have there in the parking spaces on Black River Street. I'm not so sure that we even meet that code of ordinance for that. So therefore, I would like the 15 designated parking spaces removed off of Black River Street, as was mentioned before, not mentioned that way, but concerned about other public parking, because I think after you designate the parking for the marina, as one of the patrons spoke, I don't think that we have enough parking there for that marina. And I just don't understand why we can't get paid back for our interest-free loan to the Maritime Museum for the work that we've done for them, and I don't even know why it would even be a negotiation. I need to justify that somehow.
So you're correct. Those were negotiated items. With respect to the survey, the thought was that both sides are benefiting from a survey as opposed to a drawing because it may prevent boundary disputes in the future. The survey is not just for the extension of the Orley dock, but for the premises as a whole. We don't currently have a survey legal description. We just have a kind of GIS produced image, and there has been some kind of back and forth as to boundaries. The two boundary adjustments here were things that staff and the Maritime Museum were kind of going back and forth about because we didn't have a survey drawing. With respect to the $10,000, the Maritime Museum took the position it wasn't responsible for that. They basically claimed it was a defect in the premises. I didn't personally agree with that, but there is an as-is clause in the premises. I thought that applied, and it gave us the right to have those gas lines there. But that was ultimately a negotiated kind of settlement of that position.
One thing regarding the parking spaces, now I know the Planning Commission has approved the Maritime Museum parking plan, which includes those 15 parking spaces that are along Black River. So I don't know how difficult it would be to not keep those with the Maritime Museum without having to go back and revise that parking plan that's already been approved by Planning Commission.
You're correct. Those were kind of included in the planning commission's calculus with respect to the events held at the museum. I also anticipate the museum would likely object to those spaces. They did press pretty hard for this parking arrangement in the agreement. But if it's something council isn't willing to approve, we could certainly go back to the museum and ask for some negotiation of that, or just insist that the agreement not have those 15 spaces. I'm certain they would probably react to that in some fashion.
Well, I think the big point is, do we have enough parking for the boats in the public? I mean, that's.
Well, with the addition of slip number 28 coming back into the Maritime Museum, back into the municipal marina, that's what my question is. If there was parking plan designated for the museum, and now we're adding back in the 28th slip, I guess that's a question I just don't have the answer to.
Under the zoning ordinance, we have to provide 1.5 parking spaces for the number of slips in the marina. I can tell you, there's adequate parking on Black River Street for our marina patrons and their guests. Maybe they can always go up to the office and ask for a guest pass for the day or for a couple of days. And I can tell you, there's a lot of parking down there.
A guest pass for what?
A guest pass for, say, Mr. Fitzer's guest who wants to come to the boat. The marina office does allow for a guest pass to be issued for like a time.
For the sites that are labeled marina patrons only?
That's correct.
My concern is about extending the Orley dock into the turning basin. I guess I would like to hear from Harbor Commission first. And I hadn't even thought about, like Steve said, if we approve it, then that's kind of rubber stamping it, and the Harbor Commission I'd like to hear from them first.
Well, as a member of Planning Commission, I don't understand that's the case. I understand that it still has to go through Harbor Commission and Planning Commission before it's a done deal. So.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you got that, so go ahead.
I think what Steve and Jeff pointed out are valid points. And so prior to 2018, those 15 parking spaces were public?
No, actually, prior to 2018, those 15 parking spaces on the west side of the road were not considered public. I couldn't tell you which one of the preceding agreements had that in there, but they had been marked as marina parking spaces for some time.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? I guess we got a motion, we got a second. Any other thing we want to go through? And there's there's adequate parking for the boats that are down there.
At the city's marina, yes.
Okay. All right, got anything else? If not,
Okay, and George is correct, Kate, that Harbor Commission and Planning Commission will have to review this.
Absolutely. I was actually, yes.
Okay.
It was something we talked about quite a bit, is that there was a worry that by including this into the agreement, this might be seen as giving a rubber stamp, but the agreements are contingent upon what those two boards find. And I know the Harbor Commission has been very diligent in reviewing site plans and other dock arrangements, and this will be 46 feet extending out into that harbor, but this does seem to be outside of the city's harbor lines. But again, that would be reviewed at the Harbor Commission and at the Planning Commission. So should those boards approve, then this would already be in the agreement. If it is not approved, then it does not survive this agreement.
okay.
Kate, will these concerns that have been brought up in this discussion be shared with the Harbor Commission and Planning Commission? Like the parking and the dock and?
We can make sure that these comments are forwarded to them when
That'd
they
be great.
consider that item.
Thank you.
All right. I think we've heard the questions, the comments. Still a great addition. I mean, Maritime Museum, the addition is fantastic, so hopefully we can work through this. It's a great addition to the community. All right, we got a motion, we got a second to approve the consolidated lease. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Right. Well, let's go from there. All right. City Council will be asked to consider adopting Resolution 2022-32, which is a resolution to approve an updated fee schedule and escrow policy for community development and related services.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-32, a resolution to approve and update the fee schedule and escrow policy for community development and related services.
Second.
Got a motion, we got a second. Who's got it? Griffin rushed up. Got it, my friend?
Good evening. Yes, I am here to talk a little bit about the fee schedule and escrow policy that was brought before you all previously. I do have zoning administrator Kelly Getman to set in the audience as well if there are any specific questions for her that for whatever reason we can't answer up here. But just as a brief summary, as we discussed several weeks ago, city staff has been working with Lene Wells and Aligned Planning to advance some supplementary planning, zoning, and development-related projects. Kind of first on the priority list for those was to review and propose updates to the building department's fee schedule and to incorporate an escrow policy. Specifically on November 7th, the memorandum from Aligned Planning was brought before you all. Lene was in attendance at that meeting and walked through her recommendations. And we are back before you this evening making the request for City Council to consider adopting the updated fee schedule and escrow policy. Happy to do what I can to answer any questions.
All right, sounds good. How about, let's do public questions and comments, then let's come back. So public questions, comments regarding Resolution 2022-32.
Mike Campbell, 216 Erie Street. Basically, 3 comments. 2 of them policy-related, one with respect to fees, one with respect to the escrow policy, and then just a general comment about process. Let's take for granted that reasonable fees are necessary. No argument there. There was a huge increase in the fee for Zoning Board of Appeals regular meetings and special meetings. And looking at the regular meeting, it went from $300 to $500. That's a 67% increase, pretty steep. Compare that $500 fee for a Zoning Board of Appeals meeting to the current $600 fee for a short-term rental business license. So for $600, I can get a permit that allows me to earn $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year on my rental. I have to pay almost $500 in order to protect a property right. I'm not sure if that's terribly equitable, and I think we need to have equity that's involved as well. Layer on top of it the $1,500 escrow policy that would go along with the ZBA $500 fee, and you're talking about $2,000. Put that aside and think about the 2020 census. 40% of the population in South Haven earns less than $30,000. So even for the person who earns $30,000, that represents 5% of their income on an annual basis. Do you think anyone who is earning $30,000 or less is going to be able to afford to bring something forward to the ZBA? The ZBA is the primary and really only place other than going to court to protect your property right against something that's going on. If you're going to require someone to pay 5% or more of their income in order to go before the board that is supposed to represent you, and you are one of those 40% of people who earns $30,000 or less in this city, you, by adopting this policy, will essentially create a barrier of access for 40% of the people who live here. So before you pass it, I want you to think about that very hard, because that is not good policy. Let's move on to just the general comment about process on the escrow. It's very dangerously curious that the whole talk about this new policy has occurred in such coincidental timing with what happened over the past few months, where several appeals were filed for interpretations before the ZBA. This has created a discussion within the city of what do we do in order to cover the costs. I've not heard any argument from anyone at ZBA, City Council, or staff that any of those filings were, or potential filings, were frivolous. So we have reasonable fees for things that are reasonable. I personally don't think $1,500 for a bottom line escrow to do anything is reasonable. I believe that the city needs to bear the cost of certain things. And we know that a lot of these ZBA appeals are coming up as a result of mistakes made by the city. And so when you make a mistake, why am I paying for it? Why should I have to put on an escrow? I would say make fewer mistakes, fewer things would be brought before the ZBA, and everybody would be a whole lot happier. So I do not believe that you should support the escrow policy of this proposal. You may certainly go ahead with the fees, but I definitely would recommend that you reject the policy and go back and look at it further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Agnello, 964 Everett Parkway. I agree with Mike. I think these escrow accounts are regressive. If you are to apply to the ZBA, it's going to cost you $300 plus $1,500 escrow. And one of the ways they justify it was, oh, staff has to spend money on this, we have to use our lawyer or consultant or whatever it is. Staff is on salary, and if they don't get paid for overtime, they have to have overtime to do something for the ZBA. I'm sorry, but they have to do it. And I think we don't need a consultant to look at a ordinance and say, okay, it's either yes or no. And no offense, Mr. Nick, but we use our attorney way too much. We make decisions with the city based on what our attorney says. And we're using too many times we're using him to make decisions. I think we got to back off. We're paying a lot of money in attorney fees, okay? And another example was the Corellos, you know, they just had one meeting and they were charged escrow fee, and the city said, oh, we'll give you a token $300 back. You know, that was a simple case. It didn't take much. There was a layout of the existing barbecue or whatever it was, and this is what the new one was, and here's a picture showing what they actually built, and it was a no-brainer. Now, how the city could spend $1,200 to review that and over and above what the salary people paid, it blows my mind, okay? And you should reject this. It's very regressive. It's bad enough, it's hard enough to go to the ZBA. Like, give an example, you know, the Planning Commission has got to do something about the PUDs. Like I mentioned before, you cannot question a waiver given to a PUD. There's no way you can do it. The only way you can do it is to go to court and sue the city. Who's got $15,000, $20,000 to sue the city because the city made a mistake? You think the city didn't make a mistake, okay? And when they start looking at this next time, the Planning Commission's got to look at this. PUDs are getting too much power, okay? You know, I'm not going to go into what they're doing right now with all the environmental stuff. I mean, they're finally getting together. Today, we took our dog for a walk. They're putting up metal fences around lots 17 and 18. They've had those plastic construction fences up there, and you know how much our wind is. Every day we get a bad windstorm, they're down again. So they're probably putting up metal fences. I think they got the word, if they do Trailside 2 with the duplexes, I think they're going to have fencing there. But this is very regressive. It's bad enough you got to pay $300, and it's going up even more, like Mike said, to $500. You have to pay $500 and make 8 copies of all your things to send them to the ZBA, and then many times it doesn't go through. It gets blocked by our ZA. I know a person that submitted a dozen of them. She got so frustrated, she said, forget it. I've had it. I'm not going to do it anymore because I'm getting stopped for appealing a lot of things that are affecting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
John Lorsdorfer, 23 Delaware. I also would like to comment on the escrow fees in particular, and I concur with what Mike Campbell said and the concerns. But in your ordinance for Zoning Board of Appeals, you have an escrow fee for professional planning, engineering, and attendance of the attorney at the meeting, not attorney fees. In the matter that I had on behalf of the Corellos, it was an evidentiary matter. there was no legal issues that were involved. Nevertheless, the Zoning Board of Appeals decided they needed an opinion, and the city attorney did a great opinion on procedures, subject matter jurisdiction, standing, filing deadlines, and so on. It's a great opinion, by the way, on procedures. It'll help the ZBA in future matters for a long time to come. I disagree, though, however, with the attorney fees that can be imposed. So it's not part of it, but anyway, my client got charged for attorney fees for that opinion. It had nothing to do with the thing that was in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I believe if the Zoning Board of Appeals needs assistance, they should get assistance, but they should not charge an applicant. The applicant is paying for their attorney, and somehow they're expected to pay for the city attorney. We don't have that anywhere else in our system, unless the statute at the end concludes that if somebody wins some kind of a lawsuit, you might be able to collect attorney fees, but we don't have this in this situation. My concern is this: if you continue to charge attorney fees, what's to stop the Zoning Board of Appeals from having a legal opinion done for every single thing that comes before it? Why not? They're not going to pay for it. The city recently spent $8,500 for an attorney opinion on the initiative. What happens if there is a complicated issue in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the attorney fees are $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, or $6,000? Is that going to be charged to some poor applicant because they exercised the right under the statute and the ordinance to come before the ZBA? This doesn't make any sense. If you need help, make sure you have it in your budget. I want to make sure that the city council or any of the boards get proper legal advice, but I don't think it should be charged back to an applicant. The taxpayers here are paying extraordinary amount of money for their city taxes, probably more than any other city of 3,900 people. And one of the services they should expect when they exercise their right is not to have to worry about paying the city's legal fees. So if this continues, it can be abused. The courts have warned that you can't set up fees and so on that will act in a chilling manner, meaning that you can't use it so people will not bring something forward because they're going to be penalized. We've seen this in the Freedom of Information cases, and I know the attorney knows this. The cities were upset about some of the processing the Freedom of Information, so they raised their fees. Copies were $1 a page. They charged $50 for research. And all of a sudden, a person who's asking for documents is looking at thousands of dollars worth of expenses. The courts have warned, you can't do this. You can't charge things in order to be punitive or to prevent people from exercising their rights. You don't have to charge anything. There's nothing that requires you have to charge anything. If you want to do a nominal fee, fine, do that. In the case that the city attorney did quote, and I just see if I can find it here, but the escrow fees were for incurring exceptional or unusual cost. I thought it was very interesting. And it makes sense in maybe something like that, exceptional cost. In the case that we had before the ZBA, there was nothing particularly exceptional about it. It was an evidentiary, and the memo itself dealt with procedural things. So I'd ask the city council not to have attorney fees charged involving escrow. I don't think it's proper. I don't think it's right to charge what the city wants for legal advice to put on a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Was there anybody else?
Pat Gaston, 97 Superior Street. I'm not totally up, and I didn't read all the stuff in the packet on this. But just in listening to the city council meetings and things that have gone on for the last 6 months to a year, this seems like a very, very divisive issue and unnecessary. I certainly understand that we don't want to pay a bunch of attorney fees for frivolous things. I've not seen one frivolous thing. Not one. And so I guess, that's possible. But right now, this, as he said, this puts a chilling effect on anyone trying to question anything with the city. You certainly heard it. You've heard it more. You've heard it a lot of times now, how divisive this is, putting these escrow fees on. And I just think you should think long and hard about how your residents feel about being blocked from speaking up.
Thanks for comments.
Good evening. I'm Tony Carollo. I own the house at 242 Oak Street. The one that's subject to the non-conforming kitchen next door and the issues there. I think you've heard what this is all about, the fee side of this thing. I mean, I didn't know there was a $1,500 fee until I paid the $300 fee to begin with. And the $1,500 fee was to pay attorney's fees and take care of that sort of thing. If I didn't have the money, I probably wouldn't have done it. Truthfully, I mean, and all I was trying to do is get the city to live up to its own ordinances. That was all it was. And that's all it is from beginning to end. So at this stage, to go through, I mean, I've got the whole list of things that I've written down from the meetings I had with the city about listening to me as opposed to listening to our neighbors who had no clue, no idea of what the right thing was to do. And they still are causing a problem for us. So anyway, at this stage, this non-conforming kitchen structure is kind of an issue for us, and it has to do with health, welfare, and safety of my family. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments coming out tonight.
Jack Fitzer, 24 and a half. This is why I'm here. I'm not going to take your time because it's been eloquently expressed by a number of people here. But I will say that the money involved here is such that it will affect many people who have a right to question what's being done to their property or near their property. And it's going to stop them from it, from asking those questions. It's just wrong on so many levels. And I hope you folks appreciate that and do something about it.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments.
David Veenstra, 1220 Monroe Boulevard. I agree with all the comments that have been made and urge the council to vote no on this updated fee schedule.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Fitzer from 24 and a half Grand Boulevard, and I've also followed all of this, and there's two things that I guess I'd like to have explained to me. One is that perhaps I missed something, but it seems what you're doing tonight is getting information, and you're going to decide whether or not we should make an ordinance or amend the ordinance so that a citizen would have to open an escrow account in order to open an inquiry with the ZBA. It seems, if I'm understanding this right, that this doesn't exist yet. You're going to make a decision whether we're going to make that happen. And if I'm wrong about that, explain to me why. And if I'm right about that, explain to me why some citizens have already been required to do that.
You guys want to jump in and kind of explain kind of how we got to here?
Sure, I can tell you that the ordinance that is in place now allows escrows to be charged. The problem is we haven't had a policy in place that more specifically defines that. So I know there's been some confusion on the consistency of how that practice has been used, and I think that's part of what we're hoping to resolve moving forward by putting a policy in place that puts some more stringent guardrails on when escrows can and can't be used. But the fact that there's no policy in place now doesn't prevent the city from doing it. We're allowed to by ordinance.
So the fact that there's no specific amount now means you could charge anything. And the other question I had was I don't see why, if someone comes before the Zoning Board of Appeals because they want to ask for variance because of something they're building, that would be, they'd like to just have slight variance of one of the ordinances, there's something to benefit them in what they're doing, maybe you might want to charge them some money if it takes some expense to you, but the Zoning Board of Appeals, I would think, normally does that every day. That's what they do. Why you would charge someone money to come and point out to the Zoning Board of Appeals that someone is doing something that is clearly against the existing ordinance and they want to have it stopped, whatever the reason, most of the time it's going to be because it's affecting them, affecting their neighbors, affecting something else. Why somebody they're not asking you to make some change for their benefit. They're asking you to enforce the policies that are in existence. Why would you charge them? I don't understand that. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. Appreciate it. Anybody else?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I am just going to dive right in. You've gotten my mini thesis about all the errors with this process and the amount charged. Let's start with the basis of the escrow fee. So we just heard that the city is authorized to charge that. I respectfully disagree. I have gone on record saying that multiple times, but as usual, the city disregards my concerns. And look at the city now. They're in 2 lawsuits because of bad staff decisions. So there was a court case that Nick had cited in one of his memos sanctioned by the city staff to support or to prevent bad decisions being challenged. And what that court case said was the ordinance required the city council or whatever governing township, whatever, to approve the fees charged. Their ordinance required approval. And that is exactly what our ordinance requires, that the fee to be charged for the escrow be approved. And the fact that it's before you now indicates that there was no escrow fee policy in place. In fact, a FOIA request I submitted specifically clarifies that because my request was denied, stating that no such records exist. And so the packet tonight is extremely misleading. It says, see escrow policy, where you're comparing the current fees with the proposed fees. There is no escrow fee policy. I pointed that out before. I will continue to point it out, and staff will continue to ignore it because if they did what they should have done, it wouldn't be there, and they would be in a lot of trouble if people had enough money to sue for the numerous errors and pay the huge exorbitant attorney fees to challenge the city's poor decisions. The material also lacks factual support. The city memo says the proposed amounts are recommended following review of fees by nearby communities. I've asked several times for that information, and it's never provided. As I said in my email to the council over the weekend, before any vote is taken on the escrow fee, the amount of escrow fee used to create the basis to support it should be reviewed. And because of the numerous errors I'm continually finding from staff, you should not rely on any compilation of information from them, but request the direct information from them so you can see it, black and white. The current policy is open to abuse, which we've seen in the last few months. The Carollos were charged $1,500 for one simple administrative appeal for a factual determination with a 4-page staff report. People for 218 Huron had 2 ZBA hearings, paid a measly $300, and the second one had a 5-page staff report. The report was longer. They were assessed no attorney fees, but in looking at invoices, Nick did spend time on it. And with regard to the Corollos, I got the invoices from Nick, and they were charged 1 hour of his travel time. The ZBA meeting required him to be there to discuss ZBA jurisdiction. And 1 hour of his travel time were charged to these poor people who had to appeal to the ZBA because the staff made a bad decision, and it's affecting their life tremendously because of the over-rebuild that was allowed by city staff. This is exactly why this escrow fee policy should not be allowed. The city staff has shown time and time again this past year that their discretion is not in the best interest of the city nor the residents, because we have now 2 civil litigations because of zoning board, zoning administrator decisions on buildings. One on a building where they went over what was allowed, and the other is for the rebuild. What's so funny? I saw a little snicker going on there between
You saw no snicker.
or a laugh.
Neither.
The ZBA, if this does go through, it should be amended to at least allow the ZBA to reimburse and a whole or portion of any escrow fee charged. It's time that the citizens be respected, and it's time that staff is held accountable.
Is there anybody else? All right, let's move on. How about council question? I guess then, there's several, I mean, I think just to explain how we got here, previous schedule, I mean, I think just to kind of walk through a little more thoughts
Sure,
on,
I'm
just some
happy
staff
to.
thoughts on that. I just, for me, it's about consistency.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I hear the concern. I don't ever want people to feel like this. We don't want people to feel restricted from bringing concerns forward. So that's, I guess we have to make sure that barrier's clear to all of us here tonight. That's, I mean, so, shoot.
Happy to. So I will get started and give a little bit of background. There were a few things said. I guess I'll wait on some of those. And then my suggestion after that would be what I'm hearing based on a lot of the comments and concerns expressed is those are largely related to the ZBA fees and the escrow fees related to ZBA applications. So if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, I'd also suggest that maybe when we get to the point of having a conversation about more specifics there, we can maybe draw those 2 pieces out just for the sake of making some progress
That's a good
on
plan.
those.
Let's do
So
that.
just to get started, I know there was a comment made early on about what a coincidence of when this topic was starting to get discussed. I guess you could say partially maybe there was some coincidence there, but I can tell you that this has actually been a topic that I've been working on with the building department since I started with the city almost 2 years ago. I can tell you that it's been on the list of something we've been working to advance, and because of other things that have come up over time, it wasn't something we were able to advance as quickly as we wanted. To the fact that in August of 2022, we actually came before City Council and asked for you all to approve a professional services agreement with Aligned Planning to help advance some of these projects that we'd had on our plate for a while that we weren't able to advance. So I guess I do recognize the coincidence of some of the discussion around the use of escrow and some of these concerns with the timing of some of this, but it is exactly that. It's coincidence. This is something we've been working on for much longer than that. The next point I want to make about what we're working on is our goal here is to get closer and to do a better job of covering our costs associated with these different building department services. So let's talk for a second about what we do right now. What we do right now is we have a base fee that is charged, and no matter how much staff time, no matter how much consulting time, no matter how many extra notices, no matter what else happens, we charge the base fee and the city eats the rest of the costs. The building department is a general fund department, which means the general fund eats the rest of those costs, which means it's subsidized by tax dollars. Understandably, to an extent, that's always going to happen, but right now, Right now, we are not close to covering our costs. There were some comments made about mistakes being made and want to see fewer mistakes. I think something we want to talk about is covering our costs might help. But moving on to the system that we can propose, there are, let's say, 3 options. You can start with, someone mentioned, you don't have to charge any fees. Sure, you don't have to. Your taxpayers are then going to cover all of the costs associated with advancing some of these things. You could continue on with the method that we have in place right now that's based on a base fee. If that's going to happen, city staff's going to have to go back, and we're going to recommend even substantially greater fee increases than some of these to make sure we're covering our costs. And part of our concern with that is if all of our base fees are so high, then we start to get into some of that regressive concern that were brought up by some of the comments. If some of our base fees are so high that they are inaccessible for some people, there are absolutely equity issues there. So one of the compromises that we tried to do was this balance of charging 2 fees, a base fee and trying to keep it at a more reasonable amount, and then charging an escrow fee that is going to cover the variable costs associated with the variable nature of the costs of so many of these different services. Let's think about site plan reviews. Sure, there are some site plan reviews that are come in that are pretty simple. We do them all in-house. It doesn't take a whole lot of time, and yet we can still bring all of the information we need to Planning Commission so they can make a reasonable determination. And sometimes there are really complicated ones. And there are ones that take hours and hours and hours of staff time, consultant time, legal time, extra research, and all of these other things. And right now, the city and the taxpayers are covering the costs for that. And we hear regularly at the Planning Commission that they shouldn't be. So one of the ways to start to work through that is by starting an escrow deposit, where the applicant puts in a base level amount of money, and that money is deducted based on the actual time and costs of these above and beyond type services, so we can make sure that the decision-making bodies are still getting the information they need. Or if it's not used, or whatever is left, it's reimbursed at the end. This is becoming a more and more commonplace practice, even to the point that we heard Lene mention earlier in November that it's almost to the plate where it's more common than not to use this type of policy because of the reasons that I exactly just mentioned. You've got your base fee, which covers your fixed costs, and you've got your escrow policy that covers your variable costs. If there are no questions with that, I can go in and start getting in a little bit into some of the ZBA stuff. Is that okay, Mr. Mayor? You want me to stop right there for now?
To see if you got any questions about what was just stated. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss escrow. First of all, escrow is asking for money in advance.
Correct.
Now, I always have a problem with people making me pay for something I haven't received yet. And if you're going to do that to people, ask for money before they spend it, at least make it reasonable so the average person can do it. $1,500 has been pointed out by Mr. Campbell is really high for a lot of people. Why would we want to make it so high for the average person? The average person has every right to be represented and to dispute something about their property as someone with a lot of money. So, in my humble opinion, I would make the escrow lower, much lower, so people can participate without having to pay for something they haven't used. Secondly, with the escrow, it doesn't mean the city's not going to get paid. It just means you're not asking for money before they spend it. So let's just say hypothetically, you ask for a $500 escrow, and it turns out, for whatever reasons, you have all these processes, and you're going to have to charge them an extra $800. Now you're up to $500 and $800, that's $1,300. Say you charge them for $800. Nobody's going to move out of this town. They all own homes. They're not leaving. You're still going to get your money, but you're not asking for money that they haven't even spent yet. It just seems a little punitive to me, the escrow account. Now, the other good part is I do think it's good to have this whole sheet, all these things. So now everything's standardized. Nobody can say it's not transparent. Everybody knows what they're being charged for certain services. Percentage-wise, I do think going from 600 to 800, 300 to 500 seems high, but that's where I think City Council has to rely on staff, knowing what kind of expenses you're incurring doing these things. Bottom line for me is, I think the people in this town have every right in the world to be able to dispute something without having to worry about whether they can afford it or whether they're going to go broke over standing up for their rights. And the gentleman with the fireplace, I think, is a prime example. He did everything right. He did not. Okay, no? Oh,
Yeah,
you
it's
shook
not-
your head.
no, go ahead,
It just
I'm sorry.
seems like he, in my opinion, seemed to be in the right, and his neighbor was in the wrong, and yet it's cost him a ton of money for something, has been said over and over again, that the city could have taken care of, and yet it's cost him a lot of money. That may be the rare exception, but I just don't see any reason to charge people a high escrow when we're going to get the money either way from them. Or am I missing something?
So let me start, I guess, going backwards with all of those. I think, I obviously respect the comments about Mr. Carollo's situation. I think there's a lot more nuance and a lot more detail to that situation than we probably want to discuss right now. Talking about the percent increase of the ZBA fees, if you're okay, let's wait and we'll discuss those when we get to the ZBA fee thing here in just a second, so I don't go too far off track. And then talking about the total amount of escrow, proposing $1,500 as our standard policy was actually quite low compared to the suggestion that was initially made by the consultant that we worked with. We actually lowered it substantially, and several other communities I've worked with have been much higher. The community I was with prior to that, the base amount for an escrow was $5,000. So we actually were doing this to be more reasonable. Again, I think we can talk about the ZBA one, but when you're talking about these development fees for PUDs and site plans, this is not gonna that's not an amount that is going to scare these developments away. Why you do an escrow instead of just saying you're going to bill them is by having an escrow, you're ensuring that it's going to get paid, or if they do walk away, you have that deposit on hand up front. So there are many purposes for that. The amount of the escrow or the maximum amount of the escrow, again, recognizing that's a maximum amount. It doesn't mean in every situation that's the amount that's going to be required up front. In some applications, conceivably, it could be less than that, but that is something that, City Council could give input on, and it could conceivably get lowered. Any other questions about kind of the general purposes of this, or can we go into ZBA a little bit?
And any money that doesn't get used in the escrow goes back to the person.
Correct. So if there are not additional, those above and beyond things needed, they're going to get that money back, or if we know that up front, they may not get charged that escrow to that amount. But yes, it's based on, it's a cost recovery. It's covering your costs.
Yeah, I think most of the things in the fee schedule look fine, and I think there is a big difference between a developer, builder, and a business versus a resident, and obviously, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but being equitable is important.
It is, and I think part of the goal is go back. I mean, we can have residents who are applying for building permits and site plan review and those types of things too, and that was one of the very things we talked about. Was there's a big difference between someone submitting a plan because they want to build a shed in their backyard versus someone wanting to build this big development. So if we raise the base fee to a point where it's unsustainable, but yet it's the base fee, so it's the same for both, that's not as fair to that resident just trying to do that thing, where this escrow policy actually creates that equity in a way because it's directly based on cost recovery.
Roll on.
Okay, so let's go on and talk a little bit about ZBA, because it sounds like that is one of the areas where there's quite a bit of questions and concerns. Let me start with what is before you all this evening is what is being recommended by staff. This is what our recommendation is and what we would like to see moving forward. I will also say that we would much rather see the majority of this move forward and pull out or amend a piece related to the ZBA instead of, for example, having this whole thing go down. We think there's a lot of benefit brought in here for the building department that we can start working to address a lot of the concerns that have been raised by the council and the public over the last many, many months. And this is a big step towards that. So let's talk a little bit about the proposed fee increases related to the ZBA. Right now, we have regular meetings and special meetings. Your special meetings across the board and in other places are always going to be substantially more expensive. Those are not your regular meetings. You are bringing everyone in for a time that they wouldn't be there otherwise. So first, let's just clarify that's the difference really between a regular meeting and a special meeting. Also, there's additional noticing requirements for a special meeting. For a regular meeting, right now the current fee for a ZBA application is $300. Just to post in the newspaper right now, the required notice, we are averaging between $225 and $285 a posting. And depending on the size of the application or the complexity of the question or questions, for example, I've seen off the top of my head ranges as low as about 180 and as high as up to about 350. So I think we first just need to recognize that, again, we're talking about covering our costs, and we're barely, if covering our costs, just on newspaper noticing, which we're required to do by law with our existing fee. In addition to that, let's talk about some other base level things that we have to do no matter what. We always have to do mail noticing. Mail noticing to a certain radius around. There's staff time, there's stamps, there's printing. I mean, there's costs associated with that, so we're easily getting over that $300 cost just right now, not even counting the costs of hosting the meeting itself. There were some comments brought up about city staff and most of us being on salary. There are a large number of us that are on salary. You're right, we're not getting paid overtime. But the more hours we are spending on a particular application is less hours that we are spending advancing other projects based on city priorities or the other things that we have to do. So, in a year like this where we've seen a significant number of ZBA applications coming in, obviously that means we're spending time reviewing and working on those things, which is time we're not spending on others. So, again, your base level fee, those are a lot of the things we're talking about. Escrow is the above and beyond. That's when we're talking about our legal opinions needed, our city attorney attendance needed, our special planner needed, our engineers needed, surveys, any of these other above and beyond type costs that are probably not going to be seen in a lot of your standard applications. So before incorporating the escrow, we recommend an increase of these costs from the 500 to the 800. So I recognize that, I think someone mentioned that's a 66% increase. That's because our fee at this point in time, my recommendations is it's significantly low. That is consistent with a lot of the research we found in some other communities. We found others I can think of off the top of my head that were $750 or more. So the fact that ours is low right now, right, increasing it some, it seems like a big jump, but there's a reason for that. How about I just stop right there for now so I don't ramble too much? What questions are there right now?
Is there a way to have someone who might not have the money to advance something to the ZBA, apply for a waiver or something like that, if they were facing economic hardships?
Financial assistance option.
I would like that.
Just like a financial assistance
Not,
option.
not that I'm aware of in the policy. There is an opportunity that does not exist right now to object to the reasonableness of fees, to escrow fees. It also says the city may charge them, so they don't necessarily have to. So I guess if there is some unique situation, the city's not under the obligation to charge that escrow. But part of this is also to create some consistency in that process. So I guess that's the best answer I have right now is in a real unique situation, I think there would be some opportunity where the city wouldn't have to charge that fee.
And I was thinking of the application fee too, because that alone would be prohibitive to a lot of people, I think. So I don't know.
In general, I guess that would be correct. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do. I don't know if our ordinance has an opportunity to
I don't believe it does.
to appeal those, but not that I'm aware of.
I don't believe it does because it really has to cover the news publishing is one of the primary reasons. And like Griffin said, I mean, I very rarely see a newspaper publishing that's less than $285, and that's for a small amount of text. I mean, the more you put in the newspaper notice, which you have to put certain amounts of information in there, the more it costs. I mean, and you have to do that by law. You have to provide a newspaper notice. That's primarily the reason why you have the fees that are in there right now, and that $300 is just not covering most of it.
Yeah, well, I understand that and appreciate that it does cost, but I'm just thinking of, some of the residents in South Haven who would feel like they wouldn't even have that option and their life could be impacted.
Sure. I mean, I
significantly, and they have no recourse really for the city. I just would like us to maybe think about if that's
Sure.
something that we could have so that
It's a great point.
everyone has a possibility to come before the ZBA.
Sort of financial assistance, like I said, some financial assistance option.
This is probably just my ignorance, but if someone appeals to the ZBA and whoever reviews it, I assume Kelly, but I don't know who reviews it. I assume the board does. If it seems like a straightforward, simple one, because you said many of these cases are pretty simple, then do we have to enact a escrow on them?
No. So we may, so that the policy's written where an escrow may be charged. There are going to be some situations where an escrow wouldn't or may not have to be charged. There are also going to be times where it may be charged and we find out that wasn't needed and then that amount will be reimbursed. But I think what's important is a lot of these cases are really unique and a lot of them are kind of case by case. I know I've been getting a lot of comments recently that, that one was really simple, that one should have been easy. I disagree with that. I mean, a lot of these are very unique. You have two sides that we have to look at. So I don't expect that everyone is going to have one. I think even the way this is written, there are certain situations when it's charged, but there's not always going to be an escrow.
Right. So the way the policy is written is that when the city manager's designee determines that advice from consultants will be required or that there are other unusual preparation involved in the application. I mean, I can just tell you, I go to very few zoning board of appeals meetings. I've probably been to 5 in my 10 years with the city. I'm occasionally asked to review staff reports that are done by staff in preparation for a ZBA meeting. That's usually a pretty cursory review. The matter that we've been discussing was unusually complicated. It took, I have my invoice in front of me. I think I spent about 5 hours preparing for the meeting. That's extremely unusual for a ZBA application. And even with that, a portion of the $1,500 escrow fee was reimbursed. The applicant was only ultimately charged $1,134. My entire invoice was provided to the applicant to show the time that was spent. And that it's been said repeatedly that was a simple matter. That matter is now in circuit court. That the city's going to incur a significant amount of expenses defending the ZBA's decision in that case. So
We get comments regularly that I feel like this is important to be expressed based on some of what we're hearing, I guess, from the gallery is we're regularly being told, oh, this is simple. Oh, that should have been an easy correction to make. We hear this from members of the public. We hear this from applicants, developers all the time. With the amount of scrutiny that everything we do as city staff is under, there is very little that we do that is simple. And we are all trying to do the best job that we can, and that requires us being deliberate and taking the amount of time that we can and balancing it with the heavy workloads that we're all working with. So, I respectfully just ask people for some patience because we are all trying to do the best we can with what we have to work with, and these often are very complicated situations. You have personal relationships, you have properties that have all kinds of unique things going on, and we're trying to do the best we can to treat people right, recognizing that there's very often two sides to these stories. And we're doing the best we can to present the information that these boards and commissions need to do their jobs effectively. George, I'm going to point to you a little bit just as Planning Commission. I mean, I know a conversation we talk about regularly at the Planning Commission is, does the Planning Commission have all of the information that they need to make an informed decision? And quite often, that means there's additional reviews, additional things, special things that need looked at. So I recognize that ZBA and ZBA applications right now are a hot topic. I just would really encourage us not to let that take away from the big picture proposal that we're trying to make today regarding the building department fees and an escrow policy.
Well, I know I've spent hours sometimes looking at site plan reviews, and that's with a staff report. And so I imagine a lot more time has gone into the staff developing that staff report surrounding site plan reviews. Now, I have looked at minutes, I've observed some ZBA meetings. A lot of times, the items that come before the Zoning Board of Appeals are items where a person wants to do something to their property, put on addition, put on a porch, and it's going to deviate from the zoning ordinance, and it's got to go through the Zoning Board of Appeals to make sure it's okay. Sometimes that involves going back and looking at the history of that property, which in some cases is over 100 years of history, and trying to figure out, okay, is this, was this previously looked at or something like that? It's not easy in some cases to make a good decision without a lot of research in some of the Zoning Board of Appeals, because there's so many unique properties in South Haven. And because it's usually a property owner, it's not somebody, I mean, it's somebody that's looking to spend a fair amount of money to develop, to put an addition or something on their property. It's not somebody necessarily, and sometimes the ZBA does this, but my recollection is it's the not the norm that somebody wants to appeal something that's the ZBA has done previously. Mostly it's somebody looking to do something to their property, so they're already looking to spend a fair amount of money, and this is just an additional amount of money they're just going to have to spend to cover the costs for staff.
The last, I guess, example or analogy I'll give you, unless there are any other questions, but it's one I've shared with, a couple of you over time is, the city of South Haven several years ago put in place a donations policy, a complete gifts policy. Because for many years before that, what the city had found is that they were accepting donations and there were lots of hidden costs associated with those donations over time. So someone donates a bench because they lost a loved one, the city happily accepts that and then finds that there's thousands of dollars of costs in installation and cement pads and maintenance and so on and so forth that the taxpayers were now being forced to bear. We have found, and many communities across the state have found, that over time, those hidden costs also exist when it comes to applications to go before various boards and commissions and submit site plans, PUD applications, and so on and so forth. Those are those hidden costs, those above and beyond the base level costs. South Haven, wisely, and many other communities have over time, have adopted now complete gift policies that make sure all of those costs for a donation are covered up front, so the taxpayers aren't being asked to bear the cost of their donation. In a way, this is somewhat similar to that we are asking the applicants, the developers in some cases, residents in others, to cover the costs of the action, the application, the project in which they are looking to advance. That this has become the common way building departments are operating in many communities across the state, particularly as all of our budgets get tighter, our demands for services continue to go up, and we all continue to do the best we can to balance the spending the amount of time we need to on these items to do a good job and also get to something else quick because we've got a million other things to do. So.
Okay. Were there anything else?
I was just going to say, I'm just thankful to have a set zoning administrator so that we don't have to subcontract that out. And I'm sure those costs have increased over the last year or two as well. Personnel increases, benefit increases. Nothing's getting cheaper anytime soon. So I have no issues with the proposed fees.
Okay. Other than the financial assistance options, maybe that's something you guys could just.
I would think maybe we could get maybe a list of people that, that can set up a help me or a strategic fund or something there that we do the same way with heating and cooling or something. Maybe there's somebody to pull from, like if they need help with something like that, or some way to set something up like that would be awesome. I think.
I wondered about when we make changes and we put it on the property tax and we give them X amount of years to pay it out, to pay it back, like if it's a new sewer upgrade or something like that.
Kind of an assessment.
Yep, something like that. And give them
Maybe give us some options.
I'm confident that, I'm not familiar of a case, at least in the 2 years that I've been here, but I'm confident that if someone came before us and are looking to make one of these applications and they legitimately can't for financial reasons, that, our team would work with them to try to find what options exist to help them move forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm going back to what the residents said when they spoke in the beginning of this conversation, and bringing that message back. Like, is it helpful for the residents? I understand that we have costs that we need to cover and that there are certain instances where it's a resident just wanting something special for their own property, but because there are other instances in which an escrow has been required that the purpose of that was to look and see if mistakes were made or if things went wrong somewhere. I just feel like that shouldn't be a burden for the residents. So that still feels like an issue to me with the escrow.
All the discussion I've heard so far this evening just reinforces the need for this policy. And so I'm supportive of it.
Joe, did you have something?
No, I was just going to say, I will defer to the city if they say we have to go from 300 to 500 for regular and 600 to 800. They should know what the costs are and what we're incurring, and I don't think we should go in the red to do these things. So I begrudgingly will support that. I mean, I say begrudging because I hate seeing anything go up. But the escrow is where I have a real problem. And I don't know if it's possible to look at the size, maybe make a couple parameters. If the project is worth 500,000 and up is to 1,500 escrow. If it's $200 to $1,000 project, because George said some of these are big projects, then maybe we charge, the escrow is less, because either way, you probably are going to get your money. People aren't going away. They own the home, they own the property. My biggest concern, I don't want to discourage people from being able to pursue what they consider, and I consider, a fair right to question their rights on their property or whatever it is. And I don't want to be punitive with the escrow, even though it's not our intent, but where people feel they can't voice their concerns and be heard because the 1,500 is too much.
Absolutely. Well, if I can draw your attention to two things that might ease those concerns a little bit, is one thing that is included in this policy is an appeal process. So if an applicant has concerns or is objecting to a charge that was put towards their escrow, there is a process by which they can appeal that. That is something that we don't currently have in place right now. The other thing I'll point out is one of our goals is moving forward is that the city begins to annually review this and other fee schedules on an annual basis. You know, right now, the city of South Haven has a number of different fee schedules that are kind of all over the place, that are reviewed kind of haphazardly for a number of different reasons. And one of the things that, you know, with Kate's leadership, we've really started to work towards with council's goal of financial stewardship and sustainability is trying to start to consolidate some of these fee schedules where people know where all of these fees are and trying to review them on a more annual basis as associated, like we do with the CIP or some other things associated with the annual budget process. So there will be an opportunity, as with many of these things, from time to time to review not only the fee schedule but the escrow policy. And if we find that this isn't working, if we find that, again, what I don't expect, but we have a lot of people who are being prevented from going before the ZBA for financial reasons or something similar, you know, those are adjustments that can be made.
Is it possible to hold off on the ZBA-related escrow until we have our new ordinance codification? Because then I feel like everything will be pretty clear and there won't be.
I mean, that's up to the city council. I wouldn't recommend it at this time, only because we're probably still 8 months minimum to a year away from having a new zoning ordinance in place. And, you know, it's my suggestion that this is a little bit more urgent than that. But that's up to the city council ultimately.
Griffin, if the set fees are your fixed cost, and we're somewhat in the red, it sounds like, a lot of times it goes over, and we're stuck for it, correct?
Yeah, with the general fund is
So then, if the escrow is your
subsidizing the
variable
costs.
fee, then are we being stuck for that? Because if it's a variable fee, we can still pursue them, even if the escrow was only $1,000 or $1,200, and let's say we had to spend attorney fees for $2,000. Do we pursue the person or the company to get the difference as of right now?
As of today?
As of today and the past?
As of today, no, we don't, because we don't have
So we
this
take
in
the lost and
place.
variable cost too?
Yes, right now, the only money we're bringing in from most of these different applications is the base application fee cost. So I can give you examples. I mean, we've got plan unit developments that are getting amended 4 times a year, and you don't even want to imagine the amount of staff time and consultant time that are being spent every time we go through those. We're trying to put this in place to start to cover our costs.
And just to give you an example, I can remember doing a preliminary site plan review on the property that was All Seasons Marina, and that never went past the site, and there was a lot of staff effort going into that preliminary site plan review that didn't result in any kind of development. So it happens sometimes where someone has a great idea and then it doesn't come to fruition.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say I'm in favor of the fee schedule and the escrow for developments and all that. I just am stuck on the ZBA escrow, and at this moment, I don't feel like it's what we need at this time. I don't know.
All right. I mean, I think we're getting close enough. Let's probably build this thing up. Again, we need a policy. We need consistency. We've proven that over and over again. I wouldn't be against staff, maybe just, if you could look at some options for us on with those escrow fees. Are there some options based on size of project? Maybe just, I mean, with what we've given you, I mean, just.
And this is a policy. We could take it up again next meeting if we had to, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can work
I mean,
on
this
really-
isn't like an ordinance, this is a policy, correct?
Correct.
This is
So
giving you guidelines to set the policy.
Correct. The ordinance already allows us to do this. As we've heard from the public and from others, there are concerns that has not been used consistently. Putting a policy in place gives us much clearer guidelines on its use moving forward. But yes, Steve, my goal would be this is something that gets brought before you all on an annual basis.
Super, thank you.
Okay. All right. Then we've got a motion. We've got a second to approve Resolution 2022-32, to approve an updated fee schedule and escrow policy. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no.
No.
No. All right, 5-2. Next, let's go ahead, cruise through the rest of this. City Council has to consider a motion to introduce an ordinance amending the city code to upgrade from the 2003 edition to the 2015 edition of the International Fire Code.
Oh, yep. I make a motion to introduce, now I lost my place. Oh. Yep, there we go. Amend the city code to upgrade from 2003 edition to 2015 edition of the International Fire Code.
Second.
All right, motion is second. Okay.
This is just to introduce it.
Yes, introduction, yep.
Well, what we have here is we were reviewing our codes with Shays, South Haven Area Emergency Services, and they noticed that we were using the 2003 edition of the International Fire Code, which was ironic because they have been applying the 2015 International Fire Code. We are not the only municipality in Shays that is not up to date. As you can see in the staff report, Geneva, Casco, and South Haven Charter Township are all out of date as well. So this is a cleanup item to bring us up to the 2015 code, which is the adopted state code. And I do have a letter in here from the deputy fire chief when he returned back from vacation. That's why it's dated December 1st. So we updated that with the packet on Friday. So this is what's being asked, just updating to the 2015 edition. Should the state go up to a larger, another year's edition, we would bring that back for another ordinance amendment. But this is a cleanup item here.
Okay. Sounds easy enough. Public questions? Fire code questions? Nothing? Council questions? All right. We've got a motion. We got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no.
And
It's
Mayor,
approved.
we'll be setting that for a public hearing for the December 18th.
Perfect. Perfect. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I would
Yes.
request a 5-minute recess before we get started with
Let's
bills.
do that.
I'll second that.
Motion second for a 5-minute recess. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're,
Aye.
see you all in 5 minutes. Ba-doom. City Council is going to receive part one of the end of the year presentation from our Public Works Director, Mr. Bill Hunter. Good evening, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Thank you, Your Honor. City Council. This is the yearly DPW year-end report. We just started this, I think, is this our third year?
I think so.
This is our third year doing it. I have to admit, the report, actually, we got a help, actually. DPW submitted it, and we had some different, Kate and Kim actually helped clean this up, and Megan as well, so more meets the standards. But all in all, actually, the DPW staff, we have actually, I require them to do quarterly reports. And I find it, if actually I do it in quarters, I get information and it's not end of the year quick, oh my gosh, I got to find Bill something at the end of the year. So what it does also, it creates a lot of pictures. So just bear with me. I have a hard time actually cutting it all out because I know there's one guy out there that's going to say, I sent Bill a picture and he didn't use it. So I will flip through them. I'm trying to be as brief as I can, but still explaining everything. So the DPW report. This is the org chart within the DPW. We have actually a park superintendent, water and sewer, electric, water filtration, wastewater plant superintendent, civil engineer, and GIS tech. So we have a vast actually going on within the Department of Public Works. You can see actually on the water and sewer, we have a little bit more, but then it's pretty well balanced. For example, the park superintendent, which is Aaron Preeb, most of his staff are seasonal, but Aaron actually does dual duties as the arborist as well. So during those times, he's actually now hitting areas where we need to work on, for example, line clearance. So he works with the electrical superintendent, Quentin Clark. He is our water and sewer supervisor, and he has streets as well. Joe Miller is our electrical superintendent. Water filtration superintendent, that's Richie Garcia. Wastewater is Jeremy Hyatt, Mike Dopp, the civil engineer, and Ryan Bosher. Ryan, you're going to see plenty of pictures, and we'll go through. He makes all the maps that everybody enjoys. So next slide is the street department. In the street department, like I said, we have actually water and sewer and streets. So you'll see underneath here the Shawsa. Shawsa is, we have a contract through Shawsa to maintain the sewer lines, the water lines. And we have 109 miles, and that's a lot to think of. It's a lot of miles. 101 miles of sewer, and we have a 60-mile radius. 60 miles of actually covers over 60 miles. We have a street division of 10 people. That's actually, and those actually, they help at, sometimes they help out in the water and sewer side, sometimes they help out reading meters, sometimes they're helping out in the parks. So they're a versatile group. We have road miles, we have 37.47, that's with the Act 51. We have over 50 miles of sidewalk, non-motorized paths. We have over 854 parking spaces, and that's 638 pay to park, and that's plus 217 free. Parking lots, we have 7 lots downtown for 441, so total 19 parking lots and 1,295 spaces, and on-street parking 421. This is what I love, it's new actually, is I had staff start tracking everything each division does. So this is the street department. So this shows that the street department doesn't only just do streets. Painting lines, leaf pickup, coal patching, plowing, ice rink, trash pickup downtown, work orders, guardrails, dead animals. I did actually, there were some pictures I didn't put in here, and there's the dead animals. We had a couple of bird squirrels they wanted to include, but I didn't think it was appropriate. Shara helped the electrical part, and here's the next one. The water and sewer, the same thing. We do a breakdown of all the stuff that they do. So we have a very versatile staff doing a lot of different things, but also working as a team and helping out in other departments as well. We have the electrical department, for example, they've done snow plowing for us, and we've actually had the wastewater plant help out during storm damage. So it's all hands on deck. There's certain times we have everybody out there, and I applaud our staff. There's no question. They just go right on it, and they're out there doing it. This is example sometimes what the staff experiences with water main breaks. To the one to the top left, that's a 6-inch main that cracked on the bottom half, and to the top right, that's a 4-inch. So here's just some of the conditions staff will do in the middle of the night. The equipment we had there, you'll see to the right side, that's actually the Vector truck tube, and that piece of equipment is a new one we just purchased. It allows us to hydro excavate, meaning we can get down to someplace quicker and safer and get the repairs done and getting something back in service. This is just a picture of our hot box and staff doing some large patching. Currently, actually, in the winter, we're doing a lot of cold patching because we get this, let's go plow, and then all of a sudden everything thaws, and here's all the potholes. So we're out there a lot of times during the winter, and then the spring. It does curtail down some in the summer, but then it always picks right back up at this time. This is some sand removal we had actually early this spring, and that was due to a sanitary survey from the state of Michigan. Sanitary survey is an evaluation. I told City Council we just recently completed another one this year. This is one where we were told actually we needed to clear the sand out to get the proper depth from the vents going down, the snorkels going. You'll actually see them in the bottom picture over to your right, that we were required actually so much clearance from the sand itself, from the baseline up to the snorkel, so we had to clear that sand out.
Let's do a little trivia question. Anybody know how much water's below that building right there?
20% of the city's reserve.
What's that?
20%.
That's pretty close. That's about 1 million gallons right there. And we have another 500,000 that's right underneath actually the water plant itself, so two. We're actually required to keep that on staff. That is actually, we're required to keep so much water there to create what they call contact time to deactivate cryptosporidium. We're required actually to keep it so much time because cryptosporidium will actually still, if the water moved after not enough contact time, it's susceptible. It could actually appear within there. So we're required to keep it. It allows the water and the chlorine to keep in that contact to deactivate that cell. And there's other cells, but that's the one that comes to the top of my head. There was a problem, I want to say, about 20 years ago in Milwaukee where they had a cryptosporidium outbreak. A lot of people got sick and a few people died. There we go. HESCO barriers, this was the ta-da. We used to put this one in there. A lot of people were happy us
HESCO
removing them.
barriers.
I remember we had some discussion and council asked, well, we'd be able to save these things. Initially, that's what we thought, but we were not unsavable. As soon as we started moving them, they're just disintegrated, so. But there's staff removing them. Staff did come up with the mechanism you see there. That was to try to lift them up, and they did their best, and I think they had a great plan in place. It just didn't, the HESCOs didn't work out. Not our staff's plan of trying to figure out something to remove it, but it just deteriorated.
Yeah.
This is actually a structure that was replaced on Lee Street. Coincidentally, we had, this was one of the ones we had reported that was on Facebook, and we didn't hear about it. Someone actually just showed their foot going through it. I do not recommend anybody putting their foot in a cavity in the road. Those cavities could go down 10, 15 feet. Do not. First thing you do is step away from it, call DPW, call emergency line. We'll get out there, we'll cordon it off. But this was probably, I want to say, down about 7 feet or 8 feet. Wow. And, but staff actually did, you'll see the manhole on the left, that was the old existing one, and the one in the middle we actually replaced, and that was actually the hole itself. This is staff doing some jet sewer work at Edgeland Center. We did actually have some evidence of a pipe failure, and further investigation is involved with that. This is the beginning of service verification. I've been telling City Council about the changes to the Safe Water Drinking Act requiring verification. That's a part of our inventory plan. This is the process we're doing it. Hydro excavation, we have to do that 4 points, and this is a part of those 4 points we have to identify with the state of Michigan. And this is a removal of a tree, actually in Black River, just showing what staff will run into at certain times. This is actually what we'll pick up on the beach, and this is on a regular basis. I mean, this isn't the worst. This is what we pick up. And staff does a great job. We're out there just about every morning picking this up, and there's a lot of interesting things you'll find within there. I did start for a while there sending them to Kate, but I don't think some of the stuff really is shareable. Graffiti cover-up just shows staff taking evidence of a graffiti and how we actually cover it up. We just got to paint over it. If you see some graffiti and it's offensive, please let us know. We did them on playground structures, bridges, whatever. We try to cover them up the best we can. Not all the times can we match up the paint. This is just some miscellaneous, some tap work. To the top left is our new trench box we just purchased. Then some signs actually that we have installed, and then some grading of an alley. This is staff installing the barriers on the south pier and coming up with a plan to do it. This is installing some signs, doing some grading, putting the handicap walkway out. This is some of the stuff we've done over the years. This is one I've just since I haven't been here that long, only 6 years, but I've moved this flagpole, I think, about 6 times. Every year. Oh my gosh. But it's moved depending on, every time it's justifiable, it's depending on where the location of the water is and where is it best to see it. So it's just kind of funny. I think I'm going to keep track and count how many times, and when I retire, we'll do a little ceremony there. This is actually staff doing a water main break on M43. We've had quite a few of them. I think I had a discussion with staff about certain areas we were having water main breaks due to not having the proper wrap of the main. These are newer mains, ductile irons that are failing at an early age, and that's due to corrosion of soil. We're looking at actually coming up with plans. This is Ryan Bosher, Mr. GIS, once a quarter. We have to actually cut out slides, so this is just some of the stuff he comes up with. Ryan is just such just an amazing young man to work with. Not only is he just GIS, he does all the research behind this. It's not just creating maps. If you have someone create the maps, I think anybody could do that. He's got that's why it's called Geographic Information System. He obtains all the records. He is very good at it. Very good at it. This is, like I said, this is just the first quarter. I'm not going to go over every map, but he does stuff like boil water notices, pressure districts, food truck vendor areas, electric outages, Ice Baker Festival, road closures. Replacing lead services, coming up with a plan for that. Bobby Walker Tournament. Updating the cemetery to GIS database. That's something actually, we're on the crest of actually getting that complete where with the proper software, people are going to be able to look up their loved ones actually on a website. So we do have the software, just getting all the information still in. We're almost there. It's just a lot of information to put in.
17,000 sites?
And Ryan's typed it all in. Wow. Yeah, he just on his, I tell him on his free time.
He scares me.
It's funny because he'll eat the same sandwich at lunch at his desk. It's ham and ham sandwich, one slice of ham, two breads. He has the same orange, little orange.
And he still won't let us get him a new chair. He needs a new chair.
No,
his chair
he took
is
that
bad.
chair actually with him to COVID.
I believe it.
And he took the chair.
You should see this chair. It's got duct tape.
No, he says it's formed right to him. He's not going to.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Such a good young man. Just some of the other maps that he's done. Like I said, I'm not going to go over all of them. Just keeping track of when staff comes up with a map, for example, we got to present with bids like the crack sealing. We can give that to a contractor with a big package. Ryan comes up with it. Again, like I said, it's every 3 quarters, so Ryan likes to fill up and get electric department. What you're going to see here is you'll see car versus pole. They like to say that. And to your left actually is a car that hit a pole, and the new pole underground at Phoenix Market. They did some work. Probably the fence right there. That's actually us doing a repair because someone inadvertently nicked their line, putting in a new fence. And then we have a new overhead service for the gas company. Here's a conversion from overhead underground on Clinton. You see 2 guys on the pole, and it's amazing, actually, these guys doing, they do have to do pole rescues, and our guys have to practice doing it, so you set up dummies up there, and they have to go do it. I'm 53, and I can't see myself climbing a pole. I see him, but we have guys that are older than me, Ed, and he's up there. Boy, that guy can move. Ed's a really good group of guys here. Here's a pole replacement. Here's actually staff doing the far left and underground service for the Harbor Club, repairing a street light at DPW, hanging banners, removing an old service off 77th. And here's actually a pedestal upgrade at 14th Avenue and Creek, and to the right photo is 72nd. Broken cross-arm brace with primary lines that are burnt, broken, fuse cut out. I gotta say, the electric department, they gave me so many. We have a burnt out, over to your left, that's a burnt out CAN transformer. We have the guys actually hand digging in an underground, bad underground, and them doing some line installations as well. New service on Clinton Street and Maple Street, back alleys. Another car versus pole accident on M43. You see that pole shattered all the way to the left. That's what a car can do. But staff has actually, you can see the lines just suspended in the air, but staff's working with that, and they put a new pole in, and what you're seeing here can be done in a matter of an hour and a half. So,
wow.
I mean, they make it look
Got a
very
local
easy.
utility.
Here's the middle of the night, another coal. This is, guys, I mean, look at the center one. Look at all the lines they have to, I mean, that says a lot for the staff, but they're able to make it look so easy. By the time I'm getting it all's clear and charged, here's removal and reinstall of a burnt regulator on Phoenix Substation. Primary extension on 72nd, primary underground, secondary, and a new service on 100 block of Erie. Replacing a transformer in Black River, an early morning outage change, a transformer in Eagle. Some 3-phase and underground assisted living center in 73rd. So they're installing the line. So everything from the pole down, they're taking care of it and running it up. 14th Avenue single-phase primary extension. Mutual aid, we're always, when we can, mutual aid, we do. We always try to help out because there might be someday we need it. And I'm a firm believer in that. Now, mutual aid doesn't mean it's for free. We invoice them. So there's nothing actually we lose at anything. They expect it. But it's mutual aid, so anytime I call them, if we need it, say something happens here, I'm more than certain, actually, there's some people that feel they owe us. And I think that way, and I think of all others directors do as well. They remember who's been out there. There's some work at the school, 2 temporary services, old primary rebuilt to 3-phase. Again, work on the school. This is for a house actually on Indiana and Cable. This is a lightning strike. You can actually see the brace and that blew the transformer in the house and tripped the substation. That's actually one we just had not that long ago, last substation where it tripped the substation. This is what tripped it. There's an overhaul, the Rose Shop in LaGrange, three-phase pole replacement, secondary underground. That's a garbage truck mishap. You know, sometimes you get new drivers in.
Who put that pole there?
This is a good one, actually. This is a pole that was covered with poison ivy. Just covered with it. So the guys actually just cut it down and just took it in the back. No one of them reported any poison ivy,
I was
though,
gonna say,
so
who
it's,
had to haul
you know,
it?
some people get it, other people don't. It's a broken, actually cut out. You'll see these rods, they're called cutouts on the top. They're basically for the transformers. Those sometimes will pop. Hanging transformer on 16th Avenue, upgrade change. And there's a backlot secondary takedown, the North Shore and Brockway. Storm damage on 1017. That's the storm damage, what it caused. You can actually see, that's actually to the left, that's the service not completely off. That's laying down, that's the pipe. It just ripped right off the side of the house. That's just rehanging a banger. That's just, sometimes that happens. I mean, the bangers, sometimes those banners, when they go up, they'll stay up and not a problem. All of a sudden you get some really wind, and it might even be the type of material. They do actually, we're pretty stringent on how many holes they have to have, but sometimes they just don't make it. Wastewater treatment plant. Our staff operates it through a contract with South Haven Area Water Sewer Authority. The same staff maintains the 31 lift stations. The wastewater treatment plant is a design capacity of 2.19. Our annual average is 1.39. This is actually the wastewater treatment plant staff helping during a power outage. Like I said, all hands on deck. And these guys just went out and just said, hey, what can we do to help? And Jeremy he worked directly with Joe, and they just helped out pushing trees, doing what they can. Just doing some install of new shutoff valves in the drying bed and doing smoke testing. We actually had our own smoke tester, and Jeremy took it upon himself to rebuild it. And we don't actually hire that out, and our staff does that internally. That is actually a pump, and what you see there are what some people call is
Flushable wipes.
wipes that actually can flush. And yes, there's lots of stuff that can flush down your toilet, doesn't mean you should flush it down. And just because the company says it can, I tell you for a fact, they don't break down, they clog up pumps. Please do not flush these wipes down the sewer. This is what they do. Staff has to pull them. And yes, we do actually are starting to buy grinder pumps, and the grinder pumps, they still plug them. So I'll try my best every year to put out the notice like I do, but please don't use your toilet as a trash can. This goes over a little bit of the 31 lift stations that staff actually we have to pump out these clear wells once a year. There's some of them we have to pump out a couple of times because there's grease that builds up. Grease likes to solidify in the wet wells, and if we don't get them and they build up, it'll actually take away capacity of the station. So we have to go in, and we do have staff on the collection side that help out the wastewater plant sides of our Vector truck. So we're able to actually jet these and clear these up and get this removed and taken care of. Water filtration plant, Richie Garcia. New plant was established, it's already 2011, so it's not that new anymore, but there's things actually, Richie and staff do a great job. They maintain that plant when it still goes up, it's still, but there are certain things we've had to replace, like fluoride pumps are coming up, other chemical pumps, we're starting to see the ends of, or starting to see those life because not everything lasts forever. The design capacity for that plant is 7. But we are limited up, they call it firm capacity, I mean, we're designed to 7, but we can't pump 7 because we can only pump the intake that we have, so it's called a firm capacity, and we're at 5.4. If we ever get a new intake or redundant intake, then we'd be able to do 7. But right now, it doesn't fit within the highest, graded highest within our asset management plan, so, but it is actually on our 25-year plan to do. But we don't have a redundant also, which was pointed out to us by Eagle during the sanitary survey. And this is, these are bacteriological screening sites. Once a week, we're taking samples from here. We run the analysis. It's called total coliform. Coliform is an indicator organism. If it's present within something, then we know there's something else to look for. But it's a present absent test, so we plant it within 22 hours. It just, if it changes colors, then we know it's total coliform is present. But we don't have it. If we had something, we would do something like a boil water notice for that, but no, we haven't. But here's just some of our sample locations. Engineering department, doing a sidewalk replacement. That's ongoing and will be ongoing. We budget $200,000 a year, a little over $200,000 this year, $248,000. Some of the work we've done recently, this shows actually on Broadway Street on a location. And I believe actually one was in front of the library and that one was resolved and one was changing a hydrant. Sidewalk replacement, trip hazards around Prospect and Church Streets. This was some on Monroe Boulevard and showed the actual different quadrants. We did quite a bit there. Plus, we had to do some handicap ramp replacement as well. Road maintenance, repainting center lines throughout the city. We do that, and next year we want to focus actually on our crosswalks, work out from our areas where the most pedestrian traffic we have, and then work outwards from there. Road maintenance in areas and chambers, us doing large concrete patches when we can. What we're trying to look at in some of our road maintenance work is, you might see before where the city actually did asphalt over top of concrete. We're actually starting to look at the concrete roads that are in the asset management plan or the capital plan we have and start looking at, are there just larger concrete patches we can do? Just so we're not having what they call a composite road where now we have asphalt over top and they don't transition well with our driveway approaches, and you have puddling there. And so some of the things we're working on. Asphalt patch, a large one we did on Lee Street. Yes, Lee is still in the capital plan, and I believe that's one is under design and will be, I believe that's in the spring. Road maintenance, large patches on Erie for a sewer and water service, and an asphalt patch on Wells Street for a water main break repair. Replacing asphalt for a water main break on Center, and concrete for water service inspection on Humphrey. Replace the concrete for the water service inspections along Fruit. So all those inspections that we had to do on those concrete roads, we had to do concrete patches. So it did actually help the road in some areas because we were able to do so many of them for the water. We were actually be able to improve some of those roads through there. This is actually, this looks like this is a part of the chip seal process, but it's called a Cape seal. And that's looking actually from west towards Baseline and a micro surface or the cheap seal on Superior in front of the Shell station. This is again our Cape seal final product on Baseline and North Shore Drive. I think those turned out pretty well. It's a really cheap alternative, and if we keep up on this, we're going to be able to raise those overall of the Pacer ratings on the roads. And this is Center Street West. These are some of the mill and fills we had, and then on Kalamazoo. And these are the ones on Superior, Spencer, Able, Cartwright, and Cable, the ones that are just completed. This is one I'm most proud of. When I first got here, Bob Burr came up to me and said, "You need to fix this bridge. It keeps bouncing." And that bridge did bounce. I can't count how many different people I had in here looking at it. And finally, I got somebody, and it was just a guy that knows a lot about hydraulics. And we spent some time with him. And sure enough, we got that thing finally, it was doing this all the way down, and Bob said it would just wake them up, and it was, but it was also causing a lot of stress on the bridge. If you think of that bouncing like that and that force, it was terrible. And finally, it was from someone from Millbacher, of all places. He came in, we paid for him to come. He spent some time with us and just showed us, we actually turned just a couple of valves. It was, like I said, I'm very proud of that one. This is replacing a water line, some of the water lines inspection, some of the replacements we've had. Art Center, the new roof, that's a great improvement. Just some of the work they had done about 3 or 4 years ago, that roof damaged. So that roof, hindsight being 2020, probably should have been done first, but some of the repairs can still be done where it's not going to be that noticeable. But it was a big improvement for that building right there. And Kerry actually did get grant money for that one, which was not included. Art placement, we do take a lot of time to where to place this art. It's not just, engineering department does work with them to make sure they're not putting it in some place that's going to affect the maintenance of our infrastructure. Parks Department, Aaron Preeb. Parks Department maintains a lot of, I mean, they do a lot of things for us. Cleaning the bathrooms, I like to say they put the shine on because you don't see them. They're out in the wee hours of the morning picking up the trash, taking care of the flower beds, the bathrooms, the trash. We have 27 parks, we have 87 acres and 33 acres of cemetery. Here's some of the installing bike racks, cleaning sand off stairs. I mean, that's a constant thing. We get a lot of calls on that, but I swear we will clean that sand, and then all it takes is a wind the next day, and it's there. Storm cleanup, they help out with that. Like I said, it's all hands on deck, and the last group we had, these people were the last group we had, they were phenomenal. These guys really stepped up, helped out a lot. Downtown, I think this year, the flowers downtown, I believe actually staff did a great job.
Lots of good comments.
They did some different arrangements, and I think even next year, we're going to have the same crew back. I think it's going to look better. I think they, great job.
See a lot of folks taking pictures down on that wall.
Yes, that's a very popular wall. It's all the flowers we ordered, and we already got we have to order the flowers ahead of time, so those are what we get, and they plant those. They hook up the holes right next to my office. That's all I hear all the time is water running. I always think there's a leak going on. I just get used to it now. There's the landscaping beds staff working on. This is actually a Memorial Day at the cemetery. Aaron did a phenomenal job organizing these volunteers coming in. All these volunteers come in and they set the flags actually for all the veterans. It was a great show up. I mean, just the cars there. Aaron Preeb did a great job his first year organizing it, getting everybody together, bringing refreshments out for the volunteers. It was a great showing. There's the ceremony they had. Here are some of the little things Aaron wants to focus on is like, for example, as before and after, doing some simple painting in some areas, like some of the bathrooms around the play areas. Painting the doors, for example, some of the stalls, some of the simple things I think that, like I want to say, putting the shine on things and touching up those things that maybe over time just didn't get to. Sand removal. I wish we had more before and after. This is what it looked like, and this is because this doesn't really do justice of some of the times they have to go out there and shovel and get these things. But that's just the access. That's what we have. We have a lot of access points and ramps and stairs and they have to be maintained. This is a good one, before and after. This one gets, this one's still, this one we try to keep clear of even now we're there, but there are certain times we just have to close it down. We just can't maintain it. Here's some landscaping project that Aaron headed up at Dykeman Park. Cemetery, splash pad, City Hall. There's a nice before and after one at Van Buren Outlook. And overall, actually, there's maintenance, cleanup, improvement projects made and daily job lists. So downtown parking lots, tree maintenance, nautical ropes, mowing, picnic tables. These are some of all the things that this staff does. Here's some more pictures of them. And they set the swim buoys. You see those guys out in the whale boat, and they're out there doing it. And we'll set those things, and then I swear it's like a day later, Kate will go, well, one's missing. I was like, I swear, Kate, it was out there. I'll tell her that, and it was. But sometimes these water levels, they'll just take one. And this is some leave pickup, of course. Staff will stay as long as they can until we get a majority of the leaves. And then the seasonal staff is done. And that's it. That's all I have. Tried to go through it as quickly as possible, so I appreciate your patience. I know it's a long day.
It's extremely important. I will just, when I laugh as you show the lift stations, we don't talk about Indian Grove anymore.
I know.
Because I missed the crews showing up when it was, turning the generator on, and how much sleep we lost worried that there was going to be some sewage in someone's basement,
Yes.
But I don't really miss it. But then also, I don't think we give enough credit to, you show all those, really you gave some really pretty nice weather pictures of the storm cleanup, but the crews go out when it's awful, and we sit in our homes and complain because our power's been out for 15 minutes, and they're out in it.
Yes.
Restoring the lines and dealing with, oftentimes still in bad situations. So I just don't think we often appreciate what happens behind the scenes. So what does government do, right? We talk about that a lot, but it's the day-to-day stuff that just goes on to keep the lights on, the water going, the toilets flushing, and all that good stuff. So,
well, like I said, staff's getting really good actually with the with reporting. I do quarterly reports, and it's been very, like I said, that's why I'm so hesitant about cutting pictures out.
Good.
But I'll try to get through them and the best I can.
No, anyway, kudos to you, to staff. There's a lot of good things going on, so I appreciate it. So, any other questions for Bill?
No, just
Comments?
thank you for everything. I love seeing everything that you do, and I feel like you're just so meticulous about it. Thank you.
We should do it more. It's good for people to understand what we do on a day-to-day basis. All right, let's do citizens in the audience to be heard on items not on the agenda. For those that are left, we have a couple. Come on up, state your name and address. You'll have up to 5 minutes, and then we will move on to manager and us and exit.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, Madam Manager. My name is Bobby Pratt. I'm the Director of Education for the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project.
Okay,
I'm
get your
here to
address, too.
implore you to implement research-based water safety practices in South Haven.
Can I get
Y'all
your
should have
address
received-
as well?
Pardon me?
Address.
It's 6133 Oak Park Trail in Hazlet, Michigan.
Perfect, thank you.
You all should have received an email from me this morning outlining expert viewpoints regarding why the beach flag system currently used in South Haven and several other Michigan beaches is ineffective, and why similar systems in Panama Beach, Florida were called fatally flawed by at least 2 experts. I would ask that the email and the references provided be added into the public record so there'll be no question that this information was supplied to you. Since my time is limited, I'll get right to the point. I was here at last month's meeting. Ms. Hosier, you gave a synopsis of the beach safety efforts. Among other things, you mentioned a meeting on September 30th in Grand Haven where you discussed the beach flags, the Swim Safe program, and the Code Blue call boxes. What you failed to mention was that after that event, and 3 days prior to that November City Council meeting, the City of South Haven hosted the second annual Beach Safety Summit. Why was there no mention of this event that was hosted by South Haven?
I'm sorry, I did mention that in the update given in November.
I'll go back and look at the tape, but I don't remember that. I don't
Also in
remember
the
being-
staff report.
Was the event open to the public?
No, it wasn't. It was meant to talk with other park managers and see what they're doing, as well as with the DNR.
So no residents or other interested parties were invited or even made aware of the event?
No.
Were there any water safety experts present?
How about, I'm
I
just.
think this
why don't
isn't a
you go
back
ahead
and forth. I think this is your comment, sir.
Yeah, just, you go ahead and, you're allowed, this is not a Q&A time, so you can go ahead and just.
Okay, so I'm wondering if there were any water safety experts present. I'm wondering if there were any that were invited. I'm wondering whether this meeting was subject to the Michigan Open Meetings Act. If there was any work product or other information regarding the event subject to FOIA. If so, I'd be happy to submit the necessary forms to get that information. I'm very concerned about this omission because it seems like you're trying to hide something. You don't think your residents and visitors to South Haven have a right to know what's going on? The media has called South Haven the most dangerous beach on Lake Michigan. By now, I'm sure you've seen the segment recently run by CBS News in Detroit. Among other things, the article highlights a terrible comment made on social media by Chuck Gruber, a member of the South Haven Planning Commission. He referred to the drownings as the Darwin family vacation. I can't tell you. We worked, the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project worked with dozens, potentially hundreds of families of drowning victims, loved ones of drowning victims. And this kind of comment is just unacceptable. I'm wondering if he or anyone from the city has publicly apologized to the family members that were affected by this tragedy that will affect them for the rest of their lives. Since I'm running out of time, I will move forward here a little bit. This issue is not going to go away. It's not going to disappear. In the past 4 years, there have been at least 8 fatal drownings in South Havens. In 4 years, 8 fatal drownings. It's not a matter of if it will happen again, it's a matter of when and how many. Pardon the pun, but you can hide your head in the sand and you can kick the can down the road, but the body count will continue to go up. You've been subject to litigation in the past. I understand there's currently litigation regarding a drowning, and there's the potential for future litigation. Rather than wasting your money defending your failures, why not use that money to prevent tragedies in the future? You're currently known as the most dangerous beach on Lake Michigan. Continuing down this failed path will not change that, but you will have a choice. Why not invest in safety?
That's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, anybody else?
Mary Hasley, 726 North Shore Drive. I agree about the lack of information about what goes on. I have raised an issue about the city manager not advising of at least ad hoc meetings. I've raised concern about the city calendar not being accurate or not having information on it. For example, the ad hoc houseboat, that only became clear that it meant every fourth Tuesday at the third meeting. But it's not on the calendar in March, and it's not I'm not on the calendar in January, and it's not meeting in December. It's also extremely disappointing that the city staff would recommend that the ZBA meeting occur simultaneously with the city council meeting. These are boards that are extremely important to citizens to have a chance to have their voice, and now you have driven a wedge deeper within our community by allowing city staff to have these two meetings in December, completely contradictory, conflicting on the same day and the same time. It's disgraceful. At a time when the vision statement, which has been received by you guys but done nothing about, says that there's a concern by citizens with lack of responsibility and the need to engage citizens in resolving problems. Case in point, no citizen or local expert was invited to the beach safety. So many opportunities missed. Why? Is he afraid that the people who are engaged in the community will show up staff people? Or you just don't have the common courtesy to invite us and engage us, despite the experts saying that's what should be done? Along those same lines, Corollas. There's been multiple statements about them getting their reimbursement, their minuscule $300 back. They have not received anything. As of tonight, they have not received 1 penny back. And I reiterate, I think it is completely an abuse of discretion to charge any travel time of an attorney to the ZBA meeting against an escrow when that attorney had an agenda item that occurred at that ZBA meeting. He had to be there. He had no choice. And to charge 1 hour of his travel time, of his fee to the Corollas against their escrow is just unbelievable and is the kind of action that pits residents against residents and results in residents not trusting the elected officials for holding the city staff accountable for these discretionary decisions that they're making that is negatively affecting us. But on a positive note, I do want to applaud Mr. Bill Hunter and his group. Bill is always responsive, is always transparent, and is always helpful. Thank you.
Thanks for the comments. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Okay, comments. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I did want to bring everyone's attention to the Dyckman Park Fireplace Project. It appears that the money was raised in advance of the December 2nd deadline, and they raised over $105,000. So that was $40,000 from the community, $40,000 matching grant from the MEDC, in addition to $25,000 donated by Shout. Looking very much towards the next steps in this project, where we will go to the DDA, Parks Commission, then of course the City Council when we have a complete gift to bring to the City Council. So really like to see all that community outpouring for that project. Last week, we did have the MEDC's CEO, Quentin Messer, in town. He was looking at least 2 of our businesses of the 3 that have recently gone through Planning Commission, Revere and Spencer Manufacturing. It's a really big deal to get the CEO of the MEDC down here, and it was nice to show them our local businesses that are expanding, as well as look at any incentive packages that could come from the state. Also wanted to bring your attention to the assessing department is developing new door tags, similar to what Bill does if there's going to be an electric outage or some other planned work. We're going to be putting assessing door tags when people are going out to measure or anything at a property. They have to do those property reviews annually or semi-annually. So this is one more tool that we can do to reach out to folks so they know what kind of work we were there and if they have questions, who to contact. Lastly, did want to bring attention to South Haven Area Emergency Services. They issued a press release last week. They have increased or improved our ISO, our insurance ratings, so you should see some improvements in your insurance rates starting March of next year. They've done a really good job of trying to improve our ratings with different inspections and different procedures, so that's a huge win for this community. We have routinely been stepping those down, but this has been going on since the 2000s, so it's big kudos to that. So those are my comments.
Great. Thank you very much. Question for Kate?
Nope.
Nothing. Council comments. I'll start on my left.
Just want to thank my fellow council persons about the workshop on food trucks. I watched that, and I thought you guys had a great conversation and gave good input to move that forward. So just wanted to let you know, thank you for excusing my absence.
You got it, you got it.
That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Arnold.
My comment, this time of year, these are huge for our community, that the cabaret, the high school cabaret will be this Friday and Saturday. The tickets are on sale right now. And the collage concert is, and this one I'm not sure on, but I think it's the 22nd. But those tickets are on sale right now as well. You can go to the high school website.
You
and
still
find
get
those
them, they're
tickets.
hard to come by.
They are hard to
Collage is
come by. I
hard.
think still 2 shows,
Might need
yeah,
to
4 and 6.
wrangle
something like
somebody
that,
for
so, yeah.
those.
Yep, those are my comments.
All right, very good.
Well, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here, and for those who spoke about various issues, thank you. And I don't know if it's worth pointing out, but I don't know that any of the city council people were at that beach safety meeting either. So it wasn't a meeting or anything like that. And I think that's it for me.
I'd also like to thank everyone that gave us their input tonight. And I'd also like to thank staff and my fellow city council members. And I also want to do a shout out to the family members of everyone that has to participate in these meetings, because behind every person here tonight, there's somebody probably supporting them. So thank you to them too. That's it.
Well stated, thank you.
No comment, thanks.
All right. A couple quick things. Holiday lights downtown look great, thanks to the CVB. We had a holiday party in the park the day after Thanksgiving. If you made it down there, thanks to CVB again, Lori and Jen and company. It's a lot of folks, well attended. Nice to see everybody down there. Nice to have the MEDC here. Very nice to have that. Again, always positive when we get leadership here looking at our community. Yes, thanks to the Leaf crew. Again, I'm amazed. I kind of joke sometimes. I'll haul out leaves and they disappear magically. It's so nice to have them in town. So I know they zip all around, and I appreciate them. They were out. I saw them all weekend out cruising around town, so I appreciate it. Yeah, let's go home. Let's take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.